Hello.
Hi, Hari, good to see you here.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Hi, Jayati.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm also good. Managing, in fact. I mean, when somebody asks me, how are you during these times, I feel very awkward to say I'm good, fine. So I keep saying I'm managing.
Hi.
Managing inside the room.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi, Hari. Hi, Hari.
Where are you?
I'm at home. Where else?
Oh. Trishur.
Yeah, since 2 years.
I really love this poster. I don't know who's Jassi, who's made this poster. I really like this poster.
This is like Amitabh Bachchan in one of the.
I've done it.
No, it's so well placed in that
I've seen
square.
one of the Amitabh Bachchan's movie poster like this, same pose.
I was trying to live out my, aspirations of being James Bond.
But it turned out to be Amitabh Bachchan.
In real life, I'll never get the chance, so might as well do this as a selfie.
Yeah.
Hey, Samar.
I don't know. I can't hear anybody. It's all breaking up.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, we are live now on YouTube as well, so it is streaming there. Hi, Hari. Yeah, welcome. And I think Samar sir is joining. Okay, now he's also there.
There he is.
So, good evening, Samar sir.
How's everyone? Hi, Jassi.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi, Samar.
Hi. Wow, so many people. Hi, guys. How's everyone?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, great. So let me just put it on the gallery view. I think, okay. Okay, I think so. We should start now. So welcome to this another episode of Xtra Bytes, and something about exploring light first, and then something about Xtra Bytes. So exploring light, we are into this almost a business of imparting education, creating a platform for desirous photographers and learn different streams of photography. And we've been in this field from almost 10 years now, slightly crossing that. And when this pandemic started and the whole stream of talks really started going live on Instagram in particular, and Facebook also to a certain extent. And we were really confused what to do. And that is when we thought of coming out with this series, Xtra Bytes, where the panelists are on Zoom and we stream this live on YouTube. The whole idea is that we all are spending too much of time and we don't want this entire discussion and this series to get lost after the session is over within few hours. So this should stay on YouTube, and anybody can go back to that any time of the year or any time in future as well. This is going to stay there. Okay. So today we have with us one eminent photographer, DINESH KHANNA sir. And on the panel are Samar Jodha sir, Sriranj, and Hari Menon and Jayati Saha. And I think it is a proud moment for Exploring Light, for me and for everyone to have such illustrious names sharing the platform, trying to understand the photography journey of DINESH KHANNA sir. Before I really ask him to really take over, I started photography very late. There are 3 times, I think. I don't know whether DINESH KHANNA sir would remember or not. I have met you only 3 times in my entire career. So, and I think first time you will not even remember that. I remember because
It was wonderful meeting you every time, sir.
नहीं नहीं मिलेंगे वो तो, but first time was that I was trying to make my mark to enter into photography world and almost to enter into the photography education world, and I was reaching Canon, and I just moved out of the lift on 7th floor of Canon India office on, I don't know, I think it was old office, I don't remember the floor, but yeah, I was coming out of the lift, and Dinesh Khanna sir, after having finished the meeting from Canon, was entering the lift. So we crossed the lift, we said hi. I said hi to him, so I recognized him. Obviously, he would not have recognized me at that point of time. That was one time. And that is the time I had a glimpse of him being in the middle of the shoot, in the restaurant. So spent almost couple of hours there. And third was obviously the recent Kumbh Mela. We stayed in the same camp. So it is, I think today is the maximum time we'll be spending together. And so Dinesh, without actually taking too much of time, and I think everybody is there on YouTube as well. Actually, I was going through your website, and the first thing actually that I noticed was how you started your career as a photographer. Honestly, very humble beginning, right from the streets of Chandni Chowk, where you started selling some calculator, from that to a bus boy in some bar in New York, and then finally picking up the camera and making an indelible mark in the field of photography. And when we look at your website, your work is very, very diverse, very, very diverse. And you certainly, I believe you certainly had quite an interesting and adventurous journey, and you continue to have that. So how about taking us through your photography journey, through your early years, and how you manage your challenges, and till now at least that you are sitting right in front of us and sharing your story. So without much ado, sir, how about taking us through that? Over to you.
Thank you, Jassi. Thank you for inviting me here. It's always wonderful to talk to a new group of people. Though I'm sure there would be some who I've already known or who've been in other talks which I've been part of. And thank you for the 4 panelists here for taking out time to be here. And hopefully they'll only ask me a few simple questions. I was telling someone that every time I have to do a talk like this, I feel like I'm sitting for my board exams. And being a good Punjabi student, my only hope is that I will pass. You know, I don't really want to get distinction or 90% plus and all that stuff. So just make sure you just pass me, by the end of this session.
वो क्वेश्चन है दिनेश आपको दे चुके हैं हम पहले से, तो आपको मालूम है कौन से सवाल आने वाले हैं. That's the real thing.
So just one request, I will half an hour, 45 minutes, just taking you through my journey, and I want to share my journey more through photographs rather than too much talking, because I do believe that I am fairly fluent in 3 languages. One is Hindi, one is English, and one is photography. So whereas I will want to talk in photography and in photographs here, because that's what the reason is for all of us to be congregated in this space, and I will explain reasons for, or how at the end of the day, various threads in terms of projects or assignments, etc., end up forming 30 years or 40 years later a full tapestry of what I really love has been my photographic life, really. So that's my intent, and I hope it will be enjoyable. I am perfectly happy if you want to ask questions along the way. And like I was requesting all of you, if you could in between once in a while cough or sneeze or make some signs of life so I don't feel like I'm an idiot talking to my computer. So here goes. There we are. Okay, so my journey with photography actually started, I would say, more than 50 years ago almost now, because Fortunately for me, my father was a photographer, and my initial engagement with photography and my learnings of the fundamentals came from him. So let me just take you through a couple of photographs which I will show you and then explain to you why they are important to me and what it means for the kind of photography I've done thereafter in my life. So that's my parents, my father and my mother. This is a portrait which is shot, I think, probably just a few days after they were married. This would have been in Simla. Just going back a few years, my parents are both from what is now Pakistan. My dad's family was from Lahore. My mother's was from Gujranwala. And post-partition, both of them, their families found themselves in Simla. And that's where they'd met. And that's where, after a few years, I think early 50s, they got married. And my father was a photographer, and he specialized at that time in portrait photography, which he'd learned from a German photographer called S. Rollo, who had a studio in Lahore, which is where he had apprenticed and worked with them before partition. And then he continued to work as a portrait photographer once he came to Simla. A few years after they got married in Simla, my parents moved to Delhi. And my father was now working with Kinsey Brothers. Some of you might know that is this very famous studio, which used to be in Connaught Place. Unfortunately closed down a few years ago. Like the cell phone camera came and killed point and shoot cameras, it also killed studios along the way. And whereas there used to be a large number of them earlier, there are very few of them left now. He worked in Kinsey as a portrait photographer. And on weekends, I believe, this is probably a photograph which is taken even before I and my two sisters were born. My dad used to love going out, traveling around Delhi. They used to, go in Tongas because they used to live in Daryaganj at that time. And he loved going to places like Qutub Minar, taking photographs there to Red Fort, etc. And so that's my mom with, if you'll see that very impressive 120 mm camera she's holding on to, and my dad's using another one. So that's the kind of influences one has had to begin with. That's my mother. This photograph my dad had shot a few days after they got married. And it has to be a few days later if you recognize that she's still wearing a kalira, which is a sign of a newly married bride. And that's a photograph which I'm not too sure if my dad took this, but it was shot in the Kinsey Brothers studio only. That's my dad, mom, my sister on the left, and me on the right. All right, so now the reason I'm showing you these photographs, of course, besides the emotional quotient, is that these are 4 pictures which are framed and kept in my parents' house as we were growing up. In the drawing room, they were kept in prominent places. So whether one was looking at them regularly or not, they were part of one's life. And in a way, and I do believe that we are inspired by photographers, but we are influenced by photographs. And this is a very, you can't really pinpoint it. But as you look at photographs, as you look at pictures, they become as much a part of you as your own pictures do. So that's something which when I look back at my life, I find that this has been the process for me to a large extent. So that was my dad. He, after working for a few years as a portrait photographer at Kinsey, he then got a job with the American Embassy. And he worked with them for over 25 years, more or less in a job which was for a journalist, because he was working with the USIS, which is the Information Services. And there's a magazine called Span, which the US Embassy used to bring out on American affairs. So he, in effect, was the local photographer for that and would shoot all kinds of portraits and events and everything. So he was there till he retired. Okay, so in my late school years and early college years, I had access to a camera, to a few rolls of film, and we even had a darkroom at home. So in a way, I had a head start as far as engagement with photography is concerned. And my father was quite liberal about me being allowed to use his camera. He actually had given me a Nikon FM2 body, which I still have, with a beautiful 50mm 1.2 lens. And that camera is, almost 55 years old. and still in perfect working condition. And what I used to also do, which was interesting, was that I was allowed to once in a while on weekends go off to something like Agra or to Jaipur or to Pushkar, or well, not Pushkar really, Mathura, places which were, you know, within a day's travel. They could come back, go there, come back, maybe at times spend the night there. And when I look back, that's how my love for photography and my love for traveling and taking pictures really, you know, got started and became something which I would engage with to a large extent for the rest of my life. But having said that, there was a strange kida I had in my head when I was 19, 20 years old, which is the time when you're about to, you know, graduate from college and move on to having a career. That I do not want to follow in my father's footsteps for one simple reason, that in India, the caste system compels you to follow your father's footsteps. That if your father's a mochi, you become a mochi. If your dad's a photographer, you become a photographer. If your dad has a shop, you go and sit in that. If your dad has a factory, you go and run it for him, etc., etc. So I didn't want to be a victim of that particular system. And willy-nilly, therefore, I was looking quite helplessly for other careers. And not having been a great student, you know, it wasn't like the doors were open for me into any company or corporate job I could find. So one of the first things I did after graduating is that I got, you know, there used to be these, they still, I guess, are these small classified ads for vacancies. And that time, this is now I'm talking about the late 70s. There was an ad, a lot of ads used to come for export houses that just started, you know, coming up in India. And I saw an ad for a export house in Faridabad, which was looking for garment quality checkers. And I applied for that, and for some reasons best known to the management, I got that job. So there I was. I used to live in Karol Bagh with my parents, and this job was in Faridabad. So I had this Java motorcycle. So every day I used to, I think it was probably 40 odd kilometers, if not more, get onto my motorcycle, go there and, you know, spend the day checking export garments for having the buttons stitched on properly and, you know, the cuffs in the right place and what have you. But that was an interesting thing because for about 3 months it lasted. And then winters came and became too cold to go in the motorcycle. So I said, I don't want to do this job anymore. And this was around the time when HCL, which, as you know, today is a multi-billion-dollar company, was just starting out because Shiv Nadar and a band of people from DCM Data had started this new company, and they were looking for young recruits, I would say cheap interns. And calculators were just being introduced, you know, as technology or as products into the country. Into the world really, but yeah, okay, in India, they probably came a bit later. So I went for a job interview. After a series of interviews, I got a job. And the job was to sell calculators in Chavdi Bazaar. And so that's what I did for about 6 months. And there was one particular instance which I will just repeat here. So I was in Chavdi Bazaar and I was sitting with one you know, Sethji in his shop. He was, I think, a wholesaler of fabric. And I was trying to explain to him the values of buying the little calculator which I was trying to sell to him. I think it used to cost about 300-400 rupees per calculator at that time. And so I was telling him कि ये तो ये कर लेता है, ये add भी करता है, minus भी करता है, ये भी करता है, वो भी करता है. So he listened to me patiently, and then he asked me the price. I said 400 rupees or whatever that was at that time. So then he told me that he pointed towards the back of the shop and he pointed towards the guy who was standing there. He says, "वो बंदा देखा है?" मैंने कहा, "हाँ जी." So वो मेरे लिए काम करता है सर. अच्छा. Says उसकी तनख्वाह है 250 रुपए और ये सारे काम करता है जो आप बोल रहे हो और वो चाय भी बनाता है मेरे लिए. तो मैं ये क्यों लूं? So that was the day when I decided that this is it for me. And I don't want to sell calculators anymore, and I need to get find something else to do. So there I was now without a job. But interestingly, you know, that is the time I had a lot of friends who were doing various things. They were all, you know, studying still or just starting careers. So there were these two friends of mine Roma and Veena, who was studying commercial art in the Delhi Polytechnic. And I used to go and hang around with them on weekends or on the evenings on the way back from my job. Or at times, I didn't feel like going to Old Delhi to sell carburetors. I used to go and spend the day just hanging around the Barsati and Defense Colony. And I used to love what they were doing because they used to make mock ads and campaigns, and they were, doing a lot of cut and paste with fonts and what have you. And that's when I realized that maybe advertising was an option I could be looking at as a career. And so I thought, why not? Let me see if I can get a job. So that's when from about 1980 started my journey with advertising. And for the next decade, from 80 till about 91 is what I was doing. I was in the field of advertising. Interestingly, not on the creative side, but I was on a client servicing person, which means I was on the marketing stroke management side really. I worked with Clarion in Bombay. I worked with Lintaz in Delhi, and then I was at the age of 28. I was the branch director of a absolutely fabulous agency called Enterprise, which at that time there were two very well-known creative agencies of India, which is Enterprise and Trikaya. And I got a break, and I think I was the youngest branch manager at that time ever to start and head a branch of a major agency. So there I was, 28 years old, doing rather well in advertising. But before that too, there was at least one time when I decided that, no, I don't want to be in advertising and I want to be a photographer. And I'd asked my father that, will you lend me some money? I want to go and study photography in the US. And he said, okay. And I think he was quite happy about it. So there he, lent me 10,000 rupees. That was the amount which was required for the ticket at that time. And I landed up in the US and I was in New York. Fortunately, I had a Marcy who lived there. So I had a place to stay to start with. And my Marcy's husband knew, because he was working at 21, which is this fancy, bar in New York, where people like Clinton and, Trump, etc. used to hang around. And so he got me a job in an Upper East Side bar to work as a busboy. I must tell you that by then I had already been in advertising for a few years and I was doing fairly well. And I was in Clarion, Bombay, decided to come back to Delhi, but then said, okay, no, let me try my hand at photography here. And I went there. And so then I was working in these two bars in the east side of London, east side of New York. And the job, obviously being in a bar, used to start at 4 p.m. and used to be on till 2 a.m. at least. And I really enjoyed that because, for the first time I was, working in a situation which is totally alien to me, which is both in terms of culture and the fact, and as you know, in India, we're not, especially with people who come from families like ours, used to serving, used to being given an order, used to being, at the beck and call of someone else. And I thought I really enjoyed that on one side. On the other, in New York at that time, and I think probably is the case even today, all the young people who come from various parts of the country and the world who want to join the film industry or television or theater, they are the ones who normally work as busboys and waiters, while they're waiting to get the big break. So it's just a very vibrant kind of, underworld of sorts, which you get to be a part of. And that's what I was doing and I was really enjoying. Of course, to get admission in a school, I needed a social security number. And in the early 80s, the way to do that was to have a paper marriage with an American citizen. And that was I had two ambitions at that time. One was to be a waiter because you got higher percentage of the tips. And the second was to do a paper marriage so I could get a social security number and I could join a photography school. But anyway, while I was working at all this, my father was killed in a car crash and I decided to come back. And that's when I joined advertising again. So that's the story about my first twist in trying to be a photographer. Then I did spend 2 years in Lintaz, 5 years at Enterprise. But after being a manager for about 3 years, I started getting very bored with being a manager. I wasn't yet bored of advertising, but I didn't like one bit this entire thing of, revenue and profits and growth and, getting people and firing people and, looking after clients and worrying about who's doing what. And I told Muhammad Khan, who was my boss in enterprise, that look, boss, I don't want to do this. And the strange thing about advertising is that just because I was good at advertising, you made me a manager. And I now feel like it's a punishment. So I want to leave and I want to try and be a photographer. And Muhammad, being probably one of the best copywriters and therefore creative people India has ever had, understood perfectly what I meant. And he said, yes, you should. And whatever I can do to help, I will. But anyway, वो 1-2 साल वही करते में निकल गए कि as it happens, कि अभी नया client आया है तो wait कर लो, अभी ये client चले जाएगा तो wait कर लो वगैरह. So anyway, by 91, I was ready to quit. Also interestingly, my accountant told me something very valuable. He said कि 5 साल काट ले क्योंकि फिर gratuity मिलेगी. And as you know, gratuity is what you get if you complete 5 years in a company, and that is a certain amount of lump sum money. And I needed that money to be able to buy equipment to become a photographer. I didn't have any money otherwise. So this is a photograph from the time I was a manager in enterprise, and some of you might recognize these people. On the left is Akash Das, who's a fabulous fashion and wildlife photographer. He used to be an art director that time in an agency called Everest. Next to him in the white shirt is Prabhuda Das Gupta, who then was a copywriter in Everest. And they used to be a team, they used to work together. Next to Prabhuda is my wife, Rachna, who used to also be in client servicing in Everest. And on the right is me, looking rather officious and, very managerial, which is what I used to try and behave while I was a manager.
Which year was this? Which year?
This is, this particular photograph would be about the 88 or 89 or so.
Okay.
And so in 91, then I quit enterprise and I started photography. And there was a party in enterprise, not my favorite, but someone else's, where I was invited, and you can see how I changed. So that's me deliberately sitting on the manager's chair, which I was not anymore. The person in the back who was my number 2 at that time I was in advertising is Saeed in white shirt. And he's now looking grim because he's the manager, and there's me, and I was enjoying myself because now I'm a freelancer. I don't care a shit anymore, So that's the way it was. So 91, photographer, dream fulfilled, but don't know what the hell to do with it, Because the interesting thing is, like I said, I did learn my fundamentals of photography from my dad, but that had to do with natural light photography. And having spent 10, 11 years in advertising, the only kind of photography I knew which you can make a living from was commercial photography. And commercial photography necessarily meant you understood film, the chemistry of film and the physics of light. And you understood how to use flashlights, you understood how to use a light meter, because with film you had to use light meters. I had never held a light meter in my life, So there I was, 91, become a photographer, but not knowing how to get about getting business, etc. But again, fortunately for me, I had friends who were art directors and creative directors who knew that I was out on a limb, and they were able to help me by giving me small assignments. And I made sure I took assignments where I could learn while I was working. Also, what I used to do is there were many free days because there's not that much work. So anything around the house, from bartans to vases to name it, I used to, through the night, I used to just set them up, try out lighting, try with glass materials, with metal materials, making compositions, all that stuff. And so I was, kind of learning on my own, though in my head I was a professional photographer, but that's the way it was. Because at that time, there were no schools in India. I'd already tried to be in the US. I couldn't go back. I didn't have the money. I'd also overstayed my visa, etc. And I was quite happy being here. Also, what happened by then is that I got married. And I'd been married for a few years. And Rachna was working in Everest. It said, listen, follow your dream, do what you have to, and I'll run the house in the meantime. And so, which is always a great support. The other thing which happened, and this is something which is stuck in my mind since Tarun Khewal gave his talk in F-Stop, and he talked about कि भगवान बांसुरी वाला जो है वो बांसुरी बजाता बनी लोगों की जिंदगी में आता, वो इंसान की रूप में ही आता है. And I have ever since looked back in life and seen कि मेरे लाइफ में बांसुरी वाले कितने रहे और कितने ही रहे. कितने बांसुरी वाले होते हैं हम समझते नहीं है. बैठ के एक दिन देखिएगा, सोचिएगा, and you'll find that your life is studded with people who just stepped up at the right time to help you with small, large, whatever things. But that's really what makes up a person's life. So the photograph on the left is of me and Sanjeev Mehta, who is in the black jacket. Sanjeev used to be my junior in Lintaz. All right. And before I had left enterprise, he'd already left advertising and he had started doing freelance audiovisuals. So when he knew that I'd left advertising and I was wanting to be a photographer, he'd got an assignment from Lintaz to make an audiovisual on Tamil Nadu tourism, which involved traveling through Tamil Nadu in a car for a month and going to every town and every temple and every interesting place and taking pictures. And that's the time we're shooting transparencies. Like you see, I'm carrying my 2 cameras with, trying to look very photographic, but failing probably quite miserably. This photograph was taken in Ooty, and the one on the right is, I think, in Kanchipuram or one of those places where you have to strip and wear a dhoti to be able to go inside the temple. So anyway, so that when Sanjeev said, "Listen, do you want to do this assignment?" I said, "I would love to, but I don't think I know enough to be able to do justice to it, Because you must remember that time going out for 30 days meant you went out, you shot, you spent all that money, you made all the effort, but you did not see a single frame till you came back to Delhi and got your film processed. I was shooting 35, so there's no Polaroid, there's no digital, there's no laptops, nothing, all right? And I was petrified. तो संजीव said कि यार देख तू फोटोग्राफर बन गया, अब तेरे को करनी यही है. मैं कह रहा हूँ I'll take the risk, you come along. I've seen some of the pictures, I think you'll do a good job. And what's the worst यार, नहीं होगा ठीक से तो फिर हम कुछ कर लेंगे. So there we were, Sanjeev, one other junior executive from Lintaz, and one driver in a white ambassador car. And it's embedded in my mind that white ambassador. Every time I see one, I remember Tamil Nadu roads. और 1 महीने तक हम तमिलनाडु घूमे, बहुत मजे आए, बहुत शूट किया. अच्छा, एक्चुअली 30-40 रोल थे सिर्फ, तो उस टाइम पे one had to be very frugal, and that is the way it was. So 2 things happened after this. One, I came back, fortunately found enough transparencies which one could make what Sanjeev felt was a very good AV. I felt was a reasonably good one. Point was the client approved it, the agency approved it, the payments were made, so everyone was happy. So it gave me the confidence that शायद मेरे को थोड़ी बहुत फोटोग्राफी आती है और कर सकता हूँ. तो एक तो हुआ. दूसरा, which was very important, is that I realized that I didn't leave advertising to become a commercial photographer and shoot products and still life and stuff like that in a studio. That I wanted to use photography also as my means of expression. And that is something which this particular assignment, rekindled my interest in travel, like I told you I had when I was in college. So photography and the fact that I wanted to travel and I wanted to explore this other country or these other Indias, which, did not belong to me, but I belong to it. And I wanted to make sure that I will be able to do that too. So starting about late 90s, I started traveling regularly whenever I had some money, which is not very much, whenever I had the time, which I had a lot of. कभी एक weekend के लिए चले गए, कभी 2 दिन के लिए चले गए, कभी हफ्ते के लिए चले गए. And I traveled the entire country on my own expense with my own money, buying transparency film because I only used to like shooting color transparency that time. And as you can understand, it was very expensive, but that is what really then, taught me the discipline of taking that one shot when you knew that the moment was right. So anyway, so that is still 95. And again, the other Bansuri wala for me in my life was Prabodha Das Gupta. So I used to go and show Prabhuda my work because we'd been friends earlier. And Prabhuda insisted that I should have a solo exhibition. And I said, Prabhuda, you're mad, yeah? I just do this for fun. He said, nahin, tera kaam bahut interesting hai. So he called up NCPA, which is the only photographic gallery in India at that time in Bombay, and told them that you have to do this guy's solo exhibition and fix the date. And there I was. Thanks to Prabhuda and thanks to Tanya, his wife. This poster was designed by her. And ironically, the exhibition was from the 3rd of April, which happens to be my birthday. So that's 1996. So this is the show which happened in Bombay. It was called In My Own World. It was about my own exploration of India, about my country, about photography, and whatever interested me. And this show then the next year came to IISc Delhi and was shown there. And yet another Bansuriwala or two Bansuriwalas came into my life, which is David Devidar, who was the managing director of Penguin, and Bena, who is the chief designer. They happened to come for my show. And a few days later, I got a call from them saying that, David's secretary called me and said, David wants to meet you. I said, Areva. So we fixed a time and I went and met him. And he said, look, Penguin is known as a literary book publisher, but we are very keen on doing at least 1 or 2 coffee table books a year. So would you be interested? And I just gaped at him, because at that time, to do a coffee table book or by a publisher telling you that they want to do a book of your work was the ultimate validation a photographer could ask for. So anyway, so there I was, and I said, hey, listen, the work you saw in my exhibition is out of work I've been doing for the last 6 years, traveling around the country. So let me just go back, look at my archives and see if there are any particular themes I've been doing unconsciously, because I really wasn't shooting anything very consciously. I was reacting to whatever I liked, whatever interested me, whatever engaged me. And so I spent a couple of months looking through all my PPs, which even by then were quite a few thousands. And I found that there were these 2 streams which I had been unconsciously following, which is to do with the bazaars, the traditional markets of India, and faith and religion, which is, these are the 2 things really, both the bazaar and faith, which India does, openly and happily in very public spaces. I think if there are 2 things which I would think, embody India and the way we live, it's really our entrepreneurship and a sense of commerce, right down to the individual who sells sabjis on the pavement, to the fact that people are involved with their faith and believe in something which is larger than themselves. All right. So that's what I'd been engaging with, on a personal level as a photographer, but without really thinking that this is a theme or this is a project which I'm following. So anyway, so that's what I went back to David and Bena and I showed them a body of, a collection of pictures. And I told them, look, I like this. This is what I would want to do, because I don't want to do the traditional coffee table book on Rajasthan or on, Tamil Nadu or on the Ganga. But I want to do something which has got more to do with the heart of my, my photography and my engagement, and do something which at that time at least was somewhat offbeat in terms of the bazaar and how people, which is really, respecting how people make a living so that they can live with dignity. And faith is about, as far as I'm concerned, about the individual having faith in something larger than themselves, and I have the deepest respect for that, even though I'm a non-religious person and actually a non-believer. And I really think that religion is one of the most corrupting things which mankind ever invented, and it's an invention, it's nothing else. But I respect both these things on an individual level. So I wanted to do the books on this, and fortunately, Penguin agreed to that. And the next 2-3 years I spent going out and traveling a bit more, and in my head then completing the stories of the Bazaar and Living Faith. So Bazaar was published in 2001, and then Living Faith was published in 2004. So that's the story of how I went from photography to advertising, to photography to advertising to photography, and how it's been very clear that I have 2 streams of photography. One is personal, and the other is commercial. And I've done that for the last 30 years, very happily, simultaneously, and I continue to do that. And that is what the rest of my presentation is going to be about, sharing work which I've done with both these streams. So here we go. Let me first show you some of the photographs from Bazaar and Living Faith. Sorry, that was a long introduction, but I get carried away with that story at times. I'm not going to stop and talk about every picture or explain where this is. It's just that I just want you to experience what I was experiencing, really. It's the details are not so important at this point of time. But these are from all over India. I mean, the pictures I've shown you till now, this is Pushkar, the earlier one was Varanasi, it's from the south, it's from the east. This is again in the south, this is in Trivandrum, Hola Mohalla in Punjab. This lady is in Calcutta, as you can see from the script. And Living Faith, which I explained, I was shooting almost simultaneously because I was looking at whatever was there in front of me and what was engaging me about India. So here goes. This I'd shot in a place called Patan. I was on my way to Palitana, which, as you know, is one of the holiest places for the Jains. And this was actually a trip for a month. I'd got into my Maruti 800 car, and I had 18 rolls of transparency film. And I traveled from town to town, cities to cities, spending 2 days in some place, 5 days in another place. And so I traveled a lot through Western Gujarat and Central Gujarat in that 1 month. This is Palitana. Ladakh, this is that, I'm forgetting the name of this monastery, but there's one near the airport in Leh. This is in Rishikesh or Mathura, one of them. And as you can see, I'm constantly looking for that one, that one person in the larger, madness of crowds and things, that one person in communion with their, whoever they believe in, whoever their God is, the Allah is, the Bhagwan is. The Jagannath Yatra in Puri. This is the shop in Ayodhya selling khadaus.
Sorry, Dinesh, this is all working with film, is that right?
This is all color transparency.
Yeah.
Almost entirely shot, entirely shot in Fujifilm. Lot on Provia, and once in a while when I could afford it, or I was mad enough to buy Velvia, as you know how expensive that was. And Velvia was a 50 ISO ASA, which was called at that time. It was a 50 ISO film. And so you can imagine the kind of control you had to have on getting your exposures right, And there was no upping your ISO and say, "Chal, isko main 3200 pe kheech leta hu because abhi thoda dark ho raha hai," none. 50 ISO was 50 ISO. That is the film in your camera. That's it. And both these books, sorry if I'm going to sound a bit arrogant, I insisted with Bena, who designed my books, that not 1 millimeter of the transparency is going to be cropped, because that's the way I used to. For me, the challenge was to get the picture right, exposure, composition, and dimension. Then, at the moment I shot the frame. I love that challenge. Some of it I still carry forward into digital. But as you know, digital makes you a lot more promiscuous because it's cheap. It doesn't cost you money. This, I must say, is one photograph my mom really liked. She was a Sardarni, and this is the Golden Temple in Amritsar. And when she saw this picture, she said, "Eh, badi changi photo hai. Mainu eda ek print chahiye." And she never asked for any other print. Ek photo di unhanu print chahiye si. So this has very special value for me because this was one print my mom had in her house. All right, so that was my story about how I spent the 80s and the 90s. Now, since I was doing commercial work, I knew a fair number of art directors, creative directors, and they knew my work. Also, incidentally, it might be interesting to know, when my books were published and came out, there was a major slump in the work I was getting from the commercial world, from advertising agencies. And after a while, I started getting worried. I said, yeah, what is happening? Why isn't anyone calling me? Or I'm, not as much as people used to call me earlier. So I called up this art director friend of mine. I said, yeah, kya ho gaya? I'm not shot with you for, this has been 6-8 months or whatever. So I said, I'm not coming to your office. I want to have a chat with you. So I went and I met him. And so I said, what happened? Why didn't you give me any work anymore? Yaar? Am I that bad? He said, no, you're a published photographer. Yaar. You're an artist. I can't think of calling you and saying, come and shoot some pizzas or some, motor parts for me anymore. Yeah, it would be such a, then I realized, that, इज्जत बढ़ जाती है किताब वगैरह से, but commercial काम जो है ना, it's actually, there are two different worlds, and it takes a lot to be able to balance both and, get people to understand why you're doing both things. And more, you have to internalize it that, look, just because you got a couple of books, don't be arrogant. Don't think that now you own the world and you can't live off the royalty of books. You can live off the prestige of books, but you can't live off the royalty of books. And it was very important for me to keep doing commercial work, and that's the only way I knew how to make a living. And I really enjoy it. I love doing it, So anyway, so our director knew my work, knew the fact that I shoot a lot on the street. So once in a while, there were these kind of campaigns which required the kind of street work or the street ethos in advertising campaigns. So I'm only going to share one with you, which is, in 2006 or so, there was the Incredible India campaign, which is being done at a very large scale by the government of India. And it was the 350th anniversary of the Taj, and they wanted to do a 12-ad campaign, and it was 12 pictures because they also wanted a big calendar to, send out to the world. And so I was called in by the agency, which is Trikaya, and we had a meeting at the Ministry of Tourism. And one of the things I said to them, I said, listen, if you are looking at Taj being shot in a beautiful, marvel of architecture and this grand mausoleum of love, then I'm the wrong photographer. But if you're looking at getting what is India and the colors of India, which I would imagine is the reason why I'm here, because you know that I work with color, and the Taj in that setting, then I would love to do this assignment. Fortunately, they all agreed, and that's how this campaign came to be. And if I may spend 5 seconds explaining this, I've manufactured this term stage street myself. Street comes from candid photography, street photography, as a lot of you would know. But when you're doing advertising work or when you're shooting for campaigns, then you have to do it in a certain limited amount of time. 2, you have to be in control of everything which is happening in the picture. So therefore, you have to stage it, but stage it in a way that it looks as real as possible. So that's why I call it straight street. So here goes. This is the campaign which I shot at that time. Interestingly, 2006-07 is the time when we were transitioning from film to digital, and I still didn't, trust digital enough to shoot a major campaign like this entirely on digital. So I also shot on 120 transparency film, and eventually the entire campaign was, we used the transparencies for the entire campaign and not the digital files. So besides the Taj, everything else which is in this picture is something which we arranged. We went and bought the models, the saris, the kapras, the boats. The camels came from Jaipur. The kites came from Sadar Bazaar because this is kite flying season. The kids are wearing clothes we had bought because we wanted to have them wearing colorful clothes rather than just, some white t-shirts and stuff. We decked up these rickshaws, we got them painted, all the ornaments we went and bought, but everything is from the local market. Everything is, authentic, everything is real. It's nothing is, it's been staged, but it's not something which is out of the, realms of reality in India. And the idea really was to, bring to the banks of the Yamuna, on the back of the Taj, the way India lives. And that's what we were trying to do with these 12 photographs.
How much, Dinesh, how much time did it take to do? Because it's obviously a very big production.
The actual photography, I think we were there for about 10 days because we were all, again, with these kind of campaigns, you can only shoot either early morning or late evening.
Right.
So that's the kind of time we spent. Though interestingly, we went for the recce sometime in May, June, which is the time when the river is like a little nala. There's hardly any water because it's the height of summer. And we didn't realize, if I may just go back for a second to the first photograph here, that when we come back and we went to shoot this in September, October, is now post-monsoon and also ice melt. So the river is in flood.
Right.
So what we had planned, we never planned for the cameras to be walking in water. We didn't have a choice because the river was in flood. It was, from bank to bank, and I'm standing in water. So the only other way could be that I stood on a wall beyond it, and I would have been looking down at the camels, which I didn't want to do. So, and the one thing which people loved about this picture, the fact that, oh, how did you think of walking camels through water? I said, no, we didn't. That's my goddess serendipity making sure that something strange can happen, So that's how it was.
You should have said it's a mirage.
Okay, so that's there were 12 pictures. I think I'm showing you 5 or 6 here. So let me move on. And so now what I want to do, so that was the first of my commercial work, which I've shown you, but it came from the fact that I was seen as a street photographer, someone who, has been exploring India and how India lives, and, familiarity with the colors of India and the life of India. So what I'm going to do now is take you through, my commercial work has largely been to do with interiors, with food, and with people. And what I've done is like a mashup. I'm going to show you first, my photographs of people, which I've shot for commercial assignments, and street. Then I think I am showing you interiors that you shoot for hotels and homes, etc. And what I do in my personal work, and then food for hotels and restaurants, and food on the street. So that's what I mean by a mashup. So here we go. A lot of my work for advertising has to do with people, and I like photographing people in real life situations. Really, I've never done fashion. I prefer things like families. I prefer interactions. I prefer emotions. I prefer feelings. So that's the kind of thing. And I like to make my pictures, even if they're for advertising, make them look like a slice of life. So that's what I have. But also, what I'm showing you is a mix of advertising work and editorial. So there are portraits, there's all kinds of stuff. Corporate. So a lot of my advertising work has actually had to do with things like banks and mutual funds, and anything where that nice, warm feelings can be conveyed so that people trust the brand or the service. I do a fair amount of corporate work. This is a large campaign I was shooting for Wipro. Wipro was very proud of the fact that they had 6 twins across their campuses. And so that's also one part
All
of the...
All of them shot in film or digital?
By now, I was shooting digital now. This is digital, yeah.
This is which year?
This is this is really from 2000. It's really, I think, the 2010 to recently. All this work has been done in the last 8 to 10 years. So as you can see, my earlier influences with the photographs I shared of my parents and the portraits which I kind of grew up with, I've carried that through as my influence into later life, both of commercial work and personal projects, which I'll show you as we go along. Like I do a fair number of corporate senior honcho type of portraits. There's a wonderful old man, Mr. Al-Qazi, who's one of the biggest collectors of photography in India. So it's just about emotion. It's about, you know, feelings. This is Arundhati Roy. This is she just come out with the book, which and there's a lot of controversy in the press, and I wanted to photograph her in a way that it seemed like there's this cameraman in the foreground, and his silhouette is like media's lurking, and you know, like a Hulk on her. So that's the kind of story I wanted to tell from this particular photograph. That's Aditi Mangaldas, who is my wife's a Kathak dancer now, and this is Aditi, is a very famous and brilliant Kathak dancer. And she's a real live wire on stage, you know, and I wanted to get that sense of power in spite of the fact that she's small in this portrait. Mr. Yadav was the editor of a very famous and well-known Hindi magazine called Hans. He was the editor, and was my father, well, is my father-in-law. I mean, passed away 5 years ago. And Rachna now is the publisher of the magazine. She's made sure that the magazine didn't die along with the dad. She wanted to keep his legacy going. So, and he was known to be a smoker. He used to smoke a pipe all the time. And, you know, he always had ideas and words swirling around him. And I'm kind of using the smoke to, you know, kind of get that sense of things swirling around him all the time. Thoughts, ideas, feelings. I photographed Mr. Mukherjee when I was doing the book on the president's bodyguard. And there's this, like I said, I shoot a lot of hotels and hospitality business. So there's a chain of resorts called Cinnamon in Sri Lanka, and I spent about 2 years photographing, and they have about 14 different resorts across Sri Lanka. And since they have an international clientele, so we had models who were flown in from China and from UK and from Australia and from India. It was a very large production. It was great fun. And again, I wanted to keep it as real as possible and, you know, make it as fun as possible. Fortunately, clients agree with these ideas, you know, and say, oh, well, why not? Of course, you know, I don't like the posed and, you know, wooden kind of stuff which you see in advertising a lot. Right, so that's a small introduction to the kind of work I do with people for advertising. And let me just show you a few photographs of people I meet on the streets or the ghats or the melas and or the boulevards of Europe, or, you know, the fields of Tanzania and, you know, China. So here goes.
Where was that previous frame?
That was in Vienna, in Austria. It was, I happened to, I was there with my daughters, and there was a pride parade going on. You talking about this one?
No. It looked like a classroom.
Oh, that's in Tanzania. There's another project which I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, which is covering the organic cotton cultivation in India, Tanzania, and China.
Okay.
Taken me into these places, into the villages where cotton is grown. I don't think I'm showing any of that work otherwise, but this was shot during that, one of those village visits of mine.
This project is still going on, or are you coming?
Yes, it is. And I hope it will. I still am under what the world is going to be like after this lockdown. And how much travel will be possible and when it will be. But yes, that project started as a 4-day assignment to go to some villages in Madhya Pradesh and photograph what they were doing with the local NGOs. But it's grown into something which I've been doing for the last 4 years in different geographies of India, Tanzania, and China. And the idea became that I'm following certain farmers who we've chosen, depending on the land holdings and gender, etc., to see how the engagement with organic cultivation has grown and evolved. I was in Vietnam for 2 weeks in January, just before all this happened. My younger daughter and I were traveling through Vietnam for 2 weeks just to see this lovely country. I love photographing people, and I love photographing people when they know I'm photographing them. I like the fact that they look at me, I look at them. A lot of these times, for instance, after having shot the picture, I will walk up to the person and show them the photograph which I've shot. I find that's a lovely way to, even if it's at 30 seconds or that 2 minutes or at times maybe half an hour of, making connection with a person, which is, I think that's the most valuable thing you can do in your life, really. And the reason I'm making this point is that, there is, I would imagine there are people who are street photographers, and there's this confusion always in people's mind. Is street photography candid or not candid? And should people be looking in your camera? Come on, just make sure that you do a picture which touches your heart, and then worry about the damn definitions later about candid hona chahiye, nahi hona chahiye, dekhe, na dekhe. How does it matter? Shoot the picture which touches your heart. Raghurai Saab had said in his presentation a few weeks ago that, photograph works for him when he feels his heartbeat has left him and gone into the photograph. Get that feeling in the picture. This is, while I was doing this cotton project, I go into the, districts of Sendua and Jhabua in Madhya Pradesh, which are tribal areas. And they have the most important festival is called Bhagoria, which happens around Holi. Jassi, that would be interesting for you. I'll tell you details.
Yeah.
And it's fabulous for about a week, 10 days. Every small town has its own Bhagoria festival, so that people from villages around come there. One afternoon they dance and they meet, and it's fabulous, and the color is amazing. And what is really lovely is that, one of the things people like to do is to get their photograph taken. It's still for them, a monumental thing to go into these makeshift studios with these beautiful backdrops, and people dress like that when they come to this festival, because this is also kind of a marriage festival. And so I, talked to one of the chaps who owned these tents, and I said, yeah, please let me hang around here for a while. And मैं किसी को disturb नहीं करूँगा, कुछ नहीं बोलूँगा, आपके साथ खड़े होकर मैं बस फोटो खींचता रहूँगा. He said, हाँ, क्यों, अरे पूछने की क्या बात है, करिए ना आप. So there I was, sitting next to him, and as he would set it up, and people would look at him, which is why they're not looking at me here, so they're looking at him. And I shot, dozens of these photographs, and I just, it was such a lovely way to spend a few hours.
When was this taken?
This photograph is about 3 years old.
3 years old.
Yeah. But Bhagoria happens even now. It happens, I forget, just before Holi or just after Holi. I'll find out the details for you if you're interested.
Thank you.
These two ladies I met in Vietnam. I forget the name of that town now. It's Hoi An, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
This again, I photographed her. She was about to be photographed in that studio, and they were. She's obviously with a couple of her friends or people from the family, and she's really excited. And someone cracked a joke, and she just burst out laughing. And I was lucky enough to catch that moment. All right. So the third thing which I do, which is second thing I do is shoot interiors, and so it's a mix of hotels and homes and industry. So I'll just run you through a few of them. I love doing this. I love, actually, I love shooting interiors and I love shooting food, because I think people who do interiors and who, for instance, people like chefs are artists. And I really enjoy looking at how people work with their skill. And in a way, this is, for me, is my homage to the way they look at their work or do their work. Sometimes you get to do these mad things where there was this new bar which is opening in Bangalore and I was photographing that. I just thought, why not ask everyone who's working in the bar to climb onto the bar and, just do something goofy. And they did. And this was the picture they used to launch the place, and it has been a really successful bar. I photographed the first Starbucks which opened in Connaught Place in Delhi. And because it was the first one, the head designer of Starbucks, she was in town. And she really liked the photographs. And a few weeks later, they were opening the 1,000th Starbucks in Beijing, in China. So she called me up and said, "Hey, listen, I want you to come to Beijing." I said, "Oh, wow, what for?" And she told me that we are opening this new store. I want you to come and photograph it for us. So there I was in Beijing, and I went and photographed the 1,000th Starbucks in China. I also do a lot of interiors of homes, etc. This is my favorite designer, a person called Adil Ahmed, who's got, some of you might know him. He's got the most over-the-top, crazy way of doing interiors. His place, this is how this is so full of color and form and texture and things, and it's just almost you're scared of how to walk, forget about how to photograph it, But I just love it. It's just so crazy. Look at that, You walk in there and you think कि मैं खड़ा कहाँ पे हूँ यार, photo तो छोड़ो कहाँ से खींचूंगा. And then you have to light such a place. Sorry?
How do you compose such a busy wall and everything is so colorful? And
yeah, it's the streets of India taught me how to do it.
Dinesh, the bigger battle is where do I end my frame? That's the real thing.
And summer, I have to, because this is these the kind of lights here. And some areas are very dark. Some of the wood is very, so I'm using my lights along with the ambient light. Then there's window light, so matching color, temperatures, and all. Man, it's a great, it's such a challenge. But that's why I love it. I really enjoy this. So this is one of the hotels he's designed. This is a place called Raj Mahal in Jaipur.
So when you shoot interiors, you prefer using ambient light only, or you carry lights?
Yeah, I carry lights and stuff. Yes, I'm an assistant. I carry lights. I've used anything from 2 lights to I think 40 to 50 lights, depending on the kind of place one is photographing. Industrial shoots at times required, especially when one was shooting film, because you had to craft the entire lighting. You couldn't just walk in. With digital today, you can walk in and because of the way digital algorithms are, the way it captures light, the fact that you can use different ISOs, you can virtually shoot most of the time with available light. But when you were shooting film, you had to use your own lights to be able to get anything on your film, because you were shooting with 50 ISO or 100 ISO film. This is a campaign, a project I did for JHW Power. They've got 4 power plants around the country, and this is the first time I got to use a drone. And this is a large drone which could carry, I insisted that it should be large enough to carry my 35 mm. So this is a fascinating project because of what you can do with the drone is really something else. It's a viewpoint which you normally don't get, And I've twice have shot from helicopters. Samar has shot a lot more in the Middle East when he was doing the Burj Khalifa. But the drone is, altogether different kind of experience.
Did you feel like first time when the camera went up and you said, I hope it comes back, Sahi Salamat?
And it happened twice that it crashed.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, but fortunately, once was, if I go back here, there's this temple in the foreground, and it's got this
Right.
grass, if you can see it, it's rather dark, but there's grass
Yeah.
around it, and it's at an incline. So as the drone was coming back, it ran out of power because we probably got a bit too ambitious, and it just crashed.
Camera, was everything okay? Was it?
And yeah, it was. But the second time, one of the propellers got spoiled, but was not at this particular place. It was in one of the other sites. And then we had to shoot with the smaller drone, which had, one of those Mavic cameras or whatever it is. We didn't have a choice. Okay. For my personal work, as far as buildings and such are concerned, I love shooting doors, windows, and walls. And because to me, doors and windows are like the facial features of a building, as eyes and the nose and the mouth would be for a human face. And it's almost like they speak to me as I walk past them, or I happen to be in a gully, or I happen to be in a particular space. And largely I find, and I do, study myself as an observer of myself and what interests me. I like old buildings, I like old architecture. And the reason I do that is because I feel that old buildings are repositories of old stories, of old ways of life, of another culture, another time. And the tragedy in India, especially, is that as these old buildings are dying out or being broken down, those stories and that way of life and that culture also is dying with them. And we are in the process, of course, of building a new culture and a new way of life. And let's see where we go with that as a nation. So I love the detailing, the arches, the pillars. You look at these balconies. Look at, I kind of transport myself back to the time when these, the person who was designing this building and then working on it, and the owner of the building, what kind of conversations would they have? How did they say कि अच्छा ये बनाना है, इसमें ऐसे करना है? Drawing करते थे, किसी तरह बात ही करते थे, फिर थोड़ा सा बनाते थे. For me, I can see that, like a film in my mind. It's I just love that. I mean, I found myself, in the gullies of Varanasi and Lucknow and what have you, just someone's staircase like this and just staring at it for an hour, and I forget to photograph it, or I photograph it once, and I just find them too charming. And this, which is actually, if you look at it carefully, and then you realize that those stone slabs are steps. And the way you can find out is because of the way the shadows are falling across the wall. So it doesn't have to be always very ornate and very florid. It can be just very simple. This is something which, for me, things have to speak to me. They have to reach out to me and say, hey, listen, I'm here. I want to be photographed. And that's what buildings do for me. Bringing that one little element of humankind in a way. This red sari here is the excitement of finding, I was happy having shot this yellow wall and the blue window. And then this lady just came along and she's wearing the same yellow sari and she, is hanging some clothes to dry. So, or in Tamil Nadu, a yellow scooter in front of a yellow wall. It's a game you play with yourself. It's the finding and seeking, and it's speaking to you and speaking back in turn. For me, that's what photography is about. It's not about taking pictures. It's taking the picture is like the, culmination of the conversation, really. I love this kind of spare negative space, no clutter. There's two elements speaking to each other. And I happen to be the third person observing this conversation here. You know how in the traditional forms, how the new world is now creeping in with that plastic bottle and with the Pepsi refrigerator, but the old way of life still remains with the godheads and the Rangoli and the architecture itself, the color schemes. So this really is the country in transition. And as you can see, my obsession with kursis has been there for 30 odd years. This is not a new fetish. Right, so some photographs, I do a lot of food photography. I used to, not anymore so much. I don't seem to get that much work now because people think that I'm too expensive. I'm ready to work for food now, but no one wants to do that either. Why I love shooting food is because I love the textures and the colors you can play with. Also, having been in advertising, I really love being part of a team. I respect art directors, I respect food stylists, I respect chefs, interior designers, client servicing people, clients, because everyone at that time, at that point, is there to make that photograph, because that photograph might be the end of your work, but that photograph then has a life of its own. And this is something I want to tell young people who might be watching this program, that don't ever get so arrogant that you are the creator and you are therefore everyone should be, bowing down to you. No, when you're doing commercial work, you're one part, important part, but one element of the entire process, because you have been assigned to do the assignment and you're being paid to do it because you have the talent and the skill for that particular assignment. But remember one thing, that the client is investing in you so that he can use that photograph to in turn promote their product and service, which is 100 or 1,000 times more than what your value is at the point. So that's the kind of confidence they're putting in you, not just the money they're giving you for that day. It is they're taking your work, they're trusting you to make a picture, which will in turn be the face of their business. It's a very huge contract. Remember that. Respect people who pay you.
Absolutely, sir.
So here goes. And I really enjoy working with food stylists and art director. There's so much fussing you can do with food. Today chefs have such clear ideas about how they want to present the work. They're real artists, Look at that. It's such a beautiful mess. It's so gorgeous. That's like an installation done in a plate,
Dinesh, that's very rightly pointed out what you said, especially when you work in, it's not just street photography I'm talking about, let's say it's specifically commercial work. It really lies in this whole collaboration space, because the more you get out of other people, the better your own results will show up finally, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the articulation, I really realized, once known that, having worked in advertising and in commercial field, is somewhere when, we've been listening to these cinematographers in the F-Stop series of talks.
Right.
A cinematographer is the crux, all the inputs of the script writer and the director and the artist and the actors and the light boys flow through the lens, but they know that that's a responsibility they're carrying, but have the humility to know that it's not just them, it's the work of literally dozens and hundreds of other people, and that really opened my eyes to understanding what it means to be a team player,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I love doing, this is so sculptural. It's almost like doing installations with food items, It's so engaging. There's no longer ki yaar ek drink pila de yaar. No, it's you make it, it's And I love street food, both to eat and to photograph, as much as I love shooting fancy food in hotels. So here goes.
This collection should be named the Lockdown Temptation.
Do that.
Here again, if you see, I mean, whoever owns the shop, he has a sense of what he wants to put where. If there is the chef in, Radisson Hotel knows what he wants to do with his food. This person in Amritsar knows what is important, where does it have to be placed, so that, when I'm putting together something, what can be, picked up faster and easier. It's a real study on human behavior in a way,
Yeah. Also, Dinesh, I like to point out, especially, I mean, like what you're saying about the collaboration in commercial space, your ability to go and work with, let's say, street photography. I can just imagine, you go there, you hang out, you share a cup of tea, you talk to the person, see the process, and then you make the picture. And it's just such a beautiful connect, I think, and it's the same thing about collaboration, what you're saying at the Radisson or anywhere else,
Yeah. A lot of these people I end up talking to, I definitely end up eating. I end up eating too much when I'm doing street photography. But it's part of the deal. It's part of the reason why you're out there. I spent half an hour just sitting with these three women. They first, said, "Nahi, hamari photo nahi khichni." I said, "Kyun nahi?" They said, "Huh? Acha." And they're speaking in Marathi and I'm speaking in Hindi. I said, "Nahi, khichne do na." नहीं क्यों नहीं, ऐसे नहीं, पर आप इतनी सुंदर लग रहे हो, आप तीनों इतनी बढ़िया बढ़िया साड़ी पहन के आप यहाँ पे सड़क पे बैठ के आप अच्छा सुंदर लग रहे हैं। ऐसे हाँ ऐसे, बट इतनी बढ़िया साड़ी आप क्यों रोज पहन के आते हो? ऐसे नहीं, आज हमारे एक खास त्योहार है, तो सुबह घर से निकले थे ये साड़ियां पहन के, क्योंकि यहीं से सीधा हम मंदिर जाएंगे।
They'll be saying like such a handsome man clicking our pictures.
Sorry?
They'll be saying like such a handsome man clicking our picture. Let's pose for you.
Which I have happier pictures of them later, but this is the first picture I shot, and she's saying, "Arey, kya kar raha hai?" And I thought this is the moment when our communication started. It's so lovely, and it could have ended then. They could have said, just go away, don't be a pain, and I would have walked off.
So you think being a travel photographer, communication skill is necessary? Being a travel photographer.
You need a smile, especially Hindustan ke andar, Hari, you know it, you smile so easily. If you smile, if you look at ease, if you look like you're not out to steal other people's lives, which is what people think you might be doing with the picture, if you don't look like someone who's being exploitative, very few people object to what, being photographed, And what I've, most people don't realize. I think digital is great because you have Lightroom and what have you. The biggest advantage of digital in street photography is being able to share that photograph. Take a picture and show it to people. You bring joy, even if it's for 30 seconds, to the person you photographed. You dignify a person. You say, "Hey, listen, I like how you look, or like what you're doing. I like your face. I like what you're wearing." It's a human connection. Don't look at street photography as chori se photo khich ke kat liya. No, there's a fun in doing that too, which I do as much as anyone else does. But there's also an extreme joy in making that connect. Being
so
human.
Did you feel any difference in doing street photography in India and outside? You have done a lot of street photography in Africa also.
Africa is like India. People are as warm and as open and as friendly. In China, I found that there was a certain amount of reticence, but not really antagonism. In Europe, I have found that people...
China, have you faced any legal issues?
Where? In India?
China. In China.
Well, I was there on assignment. So then, while I was on assignment, I was photographing people or going into markets on my own. And it was fine. It's again, how you carry yourself. If you look non-threatening and non-antagonistic, there's, body language is a universal language. If you learn body language, if you learn how to look pleasant, smile, and that's a language. You don't need words. You need words to ask you, "Listen, I'm lost. Can you tell me how to get to my hotel?" I mean, no one can tell you through body language. But interpersonal, communication is, a lot of it is through body language, really. And that's something which, as a street photographer, you have to know. You must excel. You must practice it. I love look at the architecture, look at the display, look at, how everything's put together, the colors, the forms. I just marvel at it. I just think it's so fabulous. Look at him. He's making jalebis of his own size, but look at the dexterity.
Amazing. This is jalebas.
Huh? Jaleba, yeah.
Yes.
वहाँ की जोधपुर की खासियत है वो. And this is, in Bombay, Muhammad Ali Road, when the entire road turns into, a series of dhabas and restaurants during Ramadan. So I thought I must show you this picture. This is obviously not going to happen this year, but this is 2 years ago. All right, so that was my mishmash or my mashup about my commercial and personal work. Hopefully, I've been able to, show that for me it's seamless. It's one kind of goes into the other in terms of my interest in the genre. The process might be different, but the outcome, as far as I'm concerned, is to make a photograph which speaks, which communicates, whether it's my personal photograph or whether it's a commercial photograph. I'll just take you through. I do a lot of personal projects. I don't even like calling them projects. They're more like obsessions, or they're more like, my interest for the month, for the week, or whatever it is. And Double Take is something which I did about 7, 8 years ago. Where there used to be this marvelous magazine called First City, and Bharat, who is the editor and owner of First City, another Bansuri Wala Samar.
Yeah.
It's a very marvelous magazine for culture and arts. And I'd gone to Bharat with, I was very, doing pictures which are kind of looking at the ironies of India or the, contradictions of India. I've always been very interested in that. So I'd shown him some 6 pictures, and he said, "Hey, listen, let's do this as a monthly thing, and we'll do it over 6 months." And that's how Double Take started. But he got so involved with it, and I got so involved with it, that I actually ended up doing it for 5 years and ended up doing 60 such photo features on Double Take. Here are a few of them. The idea of Double Take, like I said, is about the ironies and contradictions of India. And India is a country where 100 Indias coexist. Whether it's in terms of geographies, or whether it's in terms of antiquities, or whether it's in terms of cultures, but it's all there. And that, I think, is what makes our country so special and so unique. And as far as I'm concerned, what I love about it. And also what I hate about it at times. Like, for instance, this photograph is of, if you remember, if you're from Delhi, there's this installation which has been put up at the Ames crossing. And I believe this cost a few crores, but the people who put it up were sleeping on the lawn, right? No proper place for them to stay or to sleep in was even created while they were setting up this particular installation. That's a nice funny one from Banaras. The brown bread bakery is very famous there. And as you can see, these brown breads are of a different material. I did make a little point about what I think about religion. Color is used to entice children as much as color is used to entice followers in religion. This is something which I shot about 7, 8 years ago. As you can see, the dish antenna in this remote house, in Maharashtra. And we are a country where we were able to get, 200 channels into people's television sets into remote villages, but not worried about getting water into their homes. So that's the kind of contradiction our countries live with.
I feel this collection of yours is got more of a photojournalistic approach than the other travel work you have done.
Hari, like I said, for me, photography is about what I am interested in. It's not about taking a picture. It's, I reach out or engage with things which I find interesting. For me, the lesson about photography or life really is that be engaged, be involved, be concerned. Uh, and it so happens that my means of expressing that is through photography. For another person, it could be writing. For another person, it could be music. Uh, so for me, all this happens seamlessly. I'm not looking at it as, am I now on a journalistic hat, or am I now wearing a travel hat, now wearing a street hat, or now I'm wearing a food hat? For me, it's all seamless. Things have to talk to me, they have to interest me, I have to be engaged with them, and I would want to say something about them, and I say it through photography. So that's India for you. It's we, like I said, we live in various centuries of way of living coexist. And there's a time when we were probably the most, the best. It's been our, our instinct and our upbringing actually till a few years ago or decades ago, that we recycled and we reused and we didn't even have to take pride in that fact. It was a way of life. Today, suddenly it becomes something which, you need to think about and, so that's the irony of India. And this is something I feel very strongly about. The building on the right is actually a repository of the wisdom and the experience of literally centuries of architectural wisdom. It's not just about the aesthetics, it's about understanding of the environment, of the weather patterns, of where you live, how you live, what your culture is, and the aesthetics. The aesthetics really are what comes on top of it. And we've within one generation have abandoned that, jettisoned that, and we've gone to what you see on the left, which is a construct of steel and glass, which is actually totally alien, and worse, it is something which is wrong for our kind of weather pattern, and our kind of environment. So I find that really rather tragic, the way we are supposedly modernizing and evolving. Okay, so that was double take. Another one of my personal projects, which I've been doing for the last 7-8 years now. Two things I like to say about the Mothers and Daughters project really is that it started when a cousin of my wife, she said, she lives in Calcutta, Nina is her name, and she was going to come to Gurgaon. The daughter lives here. And she said, when I'm there, my mom's also coming with me. Will you take a photograph of the three of us? I said, of course, I'd love to do that. And I said, okay, come to my studio, which is in my basement, and we'll do a portrait. And which we did, and which is this. Now, the thing is that they, put this up on their Facebook, and I put it up on Facebook, and a lot of people started commenting and liking and saying, hey, what about us? We also want to be photographed and all that. And I realized, that this is something which I love to do. It's just, it's women of my life. I mean, I've been brought up as the only son with two sisters. I have two daughters. So, my life has been full of women. And for me, this is like my ode to Indian women. So that's where it started from. The only condition I have for shooting these portraits as the series is that everyone has to come to my studio, because the second part of this is that I, again, if you remember my first 3-4 photographs, I love doing the classical portrait. I love doing studio portraiture. So I want people to be there. It's the same background I use artificial lights. And the entire majesty of studio photography, of studio portraiture, is something I want to relive with people. And for all of them, most of them, it was the first time they've even been in a studio situation. They're not models, they're all, regular people. And it's become such an involved and beautiful experience for them and for me. And again, the advantage here is of digital photography, where I keep showing them the pictures as I'm shooting them. And they then in turn, kind of keep adjusting the expressions and how they're sitting. It becomes a jugalbandi between the mothers and daughters and me as a photographer. And that's how these photographs get created, really. I'll just run you through a few, and as you'll see, each family has, different way they behave with each other. The chemistry is different, the way they dress is different. And that's what I really am exploring as a photographer here. That's my mom and my elder sister and her daughter. And some are more serene and more calm. Some are very formal. And some are really, informal and more lovey-dovey, and it's just so charming, all of it. Some of you will recognize the person on the left corner. The blue kurta is Oshima Narayan. She's a photographer. And Oshima's mom lives in Gurgaon, and she was coming here to meet her. And she called me up and said, listen, I want to be part of the series. You have to take a picture. I said, are you mad? Yeah, you're such a good photographer. I would be too nervous to photograph you. So no, I insist you have to. So she was there only for 2 days, and it's one afternoon we decided when she's going to come. By the time she came over, her kids fell out to sleep in the car and were very cranky and didn't want to be part of the picture. And then, they were getting hassled. Forget it. Let them be the way they are. They're crying. They want to cry. One of the daughters wanted to be upside down, and I think that's what really added life to this picture.
Yeah. I think there's a whole lot of learning in this image, because most of the people who really try and create family portraits are trying to make things too plastic and too unnatural. Everything to be posed and everything to fall perfectly in place. And it is these moments, I think, which make an image rather than formal posing all the time.
Yeah. No, there's a value in a formal posing too. I mean, that, if I wouldn't ask Mr. Padia and his sons to be, touchy-feely. They need, because in the annual report, if they're going to behave like this, then they are not. Britannia shares are going to go plummeting. So it's just the mood depends on the subject. It's I can almost imagine Mr. Vadia and his two sons doing this. Wow.
Usually, when we do arranged shoots and all, people tell us like, you are the photographer, you tell us how to pose.
Yeah, always people do that. The first thing that they ask me is, how should we dress? So always my answer is, who am I to tell you how you should dress? And from that moment onwards, now if there are 2 people, 3 or 5, whatever, for the next few weeks, I hear that later when they come to the studio, that every day or every now and then they were, constantly in discussion, what should we wear? Should we wear sarees, or should we wear what kind of sarees, or should we be informal? And it's in a way, it becomes a kind of, bonding exercise for people. So by the time they come to the studio, it's just something which they worked out for themselves, so they've understood for themselves what kind of people they are, what kind of relationship they have, what is their chemistry. And one of the most valuable things I was told, which is fortunately by the third family at Photograph, this person called me up and said, listen, Dinesh, you don't know what you're doing, which is a good thing. But what you're doing is you're creating family heirlooms. In a situation where people are not doing family portraits or doing formal portraits, by creating these portraits for us, you in a way are giving us pictures which will last for generations, which is what, for instance, if you saw the first 3 photographs which I showed you, is what it is about. And I do, every time I shoot anyone, I do make a few prints and send them the digital files also, because I do want them to, value it, because everyone values it, and so do I. Okay, so here's, can I take another 5-10 minutes, I think?
Yes, sir.
Jassi, is it okay?
Yeah, please.
10 minutes more? Kissa Kursi Ka is like a lot of other personal projects of mine, didn't start as a project, didn't start as a series. it's for me, things kind of fall into place almost in retrospect, and then I, in a way, pursue them. Like I said, mothers and daughters is not something which I thought of. कि, "अरे, अब मेरे को ये करना है." No, it was, Nina Didi who asked me to shoot a portrait. And then because of Facebook and likes and people, I shot 3, 4 people. And then I said, this is something I'm really enjoying. And that person who called me and said, that what is being created are family heirlooms is what then made me feel like, yes, I want to carry this on and I want to carry on that project till the day I die. Because I find value in it and I find I give value in it. So similarly, Kissa Gursika started off with this picture. I was in Banaras early in the morning, came out of my hotel, and at the end of the lane was this chair, this black broken chair, lying in the corner. The season being such that these flowers from the tree had fallen on it, it almost looks like, this is being prayed to. And what struck me was this chain and lock, which in spite of its rather dilapidated condition, was there because this was of value to someone, So anyway, I took this picture and I walked off, took the rickshaw, went to the ghats, spent the day there. And in the evening when I was looking at my pictures, I realized that I'd shot 3, 4 more pictures of chairs. One of which happened to be this, which is a barber shop on the ghats of Banaras. And then it struck me that maybe the chairs are speaking to me. They're saying something to me. They've become like people. The people who reach out and say I should photograph them. The chairs were doing the same thing. So let me just show you a few more. My mom was in hospital. This is 3 a.m. in the morning. She was being admitted, but I'm still finding chairs. So then I suddenly was finding chairs all over the place, and I would be driving down and I saw this person cycling along. It was raining, and I, drove past him and went and stopped on the side of the road so that I could wait for him to come there and take this picture. Whereas in this case, I realized I won't be able to drive past her because the cops were there, and so I just stopped my car behind her and I took this picture. Now, Kissa Kursika, some of you would know that there was a satire film called Kissa Kursika, which came out in the 70s. It was a political satire. And the idea of the film really is about how our leaders are always looking for that kursi because the kursi has power, and the power, once it's got, is something which they wield in whatever ways, nefarious or otherwise. And they want to stick to their kursis. So the majesty of the governing kursi is one thing. But the आम आदमी की कुर्सी जो है वो बेचारी इधर उधर ही पड़ी रहती है, टूटी हुई, not looked after. It's almost like the analogy of the life of the common man. I find that analogy in the kursis. So I was shooting this over a matter of a few years, and by the time I came to the 100th picture, I was posting them on Facebook, and I said, "Ki acha bahut ho gaya yaar." And I stopped doing that, but I still keep photographing chairs as I go, and I've got a collection of more than 250 of these by now. Over the last few years, I've also been doing a fair amount of CSR work and working with some NGOs. And this one, there's only one which I'm going to be sharing with you, and this is very special for me. There's a person I know who runs a school on the banks of the Yamuna. On the other side, on the East Delhi side. And they used to, earlier the school used to have a kind of a metallic roof and some kind of a structure. But when the Commonwealth Games was going to happen, the MCD came along and broke all of it and said, no, you can't run a school here, don't have a license. And because Commonwealth Village was coming up very close to that. And so they were shunted off from there. Now, the thing is that this school is actually meant only for kids from KG to about 3rd standard or 4th standard. And the kids who came to the school are kids of people who live on the banks of the Yamuna and who are mostly people who grow vegetables there, or who work as labor in the construction sites around. And even though they're government schools, but the government schools are 3, 4, 5 kilometers away. And for these young kids, it's not possible for them to go there. The government's contention was कि school तो है, बच्चों को वहाँ भेजने दो, आप क्यों school यहाँ चला रहे हो? The argument was the kids can't go there, the parents can't afford it because the parents get up at 4, 5 in the morning, pick the vegetables and go and sell them in the mandi or on the roadside, on the Nizamuddin Bridge. So anyway, so even post the Commonwealth Games happening, they've started the school again, which is still running there. But what I want to show you is how the school is set up by the kids every morning. They have the classes, then it's dismantled by the kids and put away. So here we go. So these are the families who live by the Yamuna. It's very fertile land, obviously, there's a lot of water. So they grow seasonal vegetables. In this case, they were kakadi and kheera. So the kids also help their parents, picking up the vegetables. They live in jhuggies right there. They're getting ready to go to school. And this is this one tent in which all the furniture, the tables and the chairs and the daris and the terpel of the school is kept. And as the kids come from their homes, whoever comes earlier walks up to that particular little shed. And in the back where you see the flat cemented space, that's where the school used to be, and that's where the school is run now. So they pick up the jhadus, they pick up the daris, they pick up the chairs, and they walk to this place, and they themselves clean up the area. And all the kids, and because whether it's winter, whether it's summer, whether it's monsoon, you need some kind of a shade, so they pull up the terpel, put up the whiteboards where there's this one wall of the water pump station over there. And they have a regular morning assembly like any other school would have. And what you see in the back there, that's the Nizamuddin Bridge. And that's the classroom, that's the cover, and that's the assembly. And what this school had, they've got trained teachers. The teachers are qualified. They paid proper salaries like they would be paid in a government school. And the schools are given uniform at the cost of the NGO from the funds they raise. And they're given a midday meal like any other school would, which is run by the government. They're also given books in school bags. Oh, instantly, I was doing this. Also, Oxfam had got in touch with me, and they were doing an international campaign on education. So I told Raman, who is the person who runs this school, that I'd like to photograph you, and whatever money which Oxfam is going to give me, I would want to please, if you don't mind, I want to donate it to the school. And so this campaign was then used by Oxfam along with other campaigns they were doing as an international outreach on education. That's part of the midday meal. Each child gets a glass of milk along with food. And the school is also very careful and very, make sure that they have annual day functions. They have, like any other school would have, where kids can do dance routines and, get into costumes. So they don't feel deprived. They don't feel like, that they are anything less than any other school would be doing for them. And if I may just spend 10 seconds more, I would like to read out this. Education and the pursuit of knowledge is the key to opportunity and equality in the modern world. India has to recognize this if we wish to become a truly fair and equitable society. Pragati Wheel School is doing its bit to further this endeavor, and this is my ode to Pragati and the people who are running the school. Summer does work like this, not exactly like this, but he does, and I hope he'll talk a bit about his project, the Red Balloon project, if we have the time. Okay, we'll just, this is now, it's just crazy how I seem to bounce out like a, nut in terms of the kind of work I do. But I was commissioned to do a book on the President's Bodyguard. And this is a commission by the Rashtrapati Bhavan given to a non-profit called Sahapedia. And they were doing a series of 6 books on different aspects of the Rashtrapati Bhavan, on the architecture, on the arts, on the kitchens, and the food, and the President's Bodyguard. So I got to do the President's Bodyguard. And so for about 2.5 years, I had, full permission to go into Rashtrapati Bhavan, to go into where the barracks and the stables and everything, and be part of whatever events were happening, whether it's to do with the president, whether it was to do with festivals or things like Republic Day, etc. And I really got to be an insider because I wanted to make sure that I could, not just shoot the pomp and pageantry which they were involved with, but also this behind the scene of, what their life is about. Who are these people? Who are these men? What is their life? What is the engagement with the horses? How are the horses looked after? How they're reared? How they're trained? So that's what the book is all about. And I'll just show you a few photographs from there. This eventually was the cover of the book. They take the horses out for riding early in the morning at 5:30 to the ridge area. And this was just as winter was coming in. So it's, kind of misty and the lights falling through the trees. That's when the guard of honor is given for any visiting dignitaries. So that's the commandant who then, once everyone is in place, he will ride in, and then the president comes in, etc., etc. So this is a shot which, this is what would happen when they ride out to the Republic Day parade, but obviously I couldn't have been in this position if it was the actual Republic Day parade, because that would be crazy. So because I was commissioned to do this, I could arrange to get them to do this for me. And I'm now standing on top of one of those 5-ton trucks, so that I would be at the same eye level, though I'm down the slope from the horses. So it was great fun because I could just tell them what I wanted them to do, and everyone was really enjoying themselves. And I know for a fact this is the only photograph in the annals of photography. I'm sitting on top of the Rashtrapati Bhavan porch, just below the dome. And this is when President Obama had come as a guest of honor for Republic Day. That's him in the center under that red awning. And it is such a president bodyguard in the back there, taking this guard of honor. And the one soldier standing in the center alone, that was the first time a woman soldier was going to be heading the guard of honor. And that's her. So like I said, I was there from morning to evening on certain days, and I would be there in the barracks and how they would dress and how would they live and everything, and how they, were with the animals. And I really, got to understand that these men, the mandatory thing for being a member of the PBG is that you have to be at least 6 feet tall. So, these guys are giants, and the horses are large and very, formidable looking. But because over the years, they're looking after the horses and they're caring for them and they're nurturing them. I ended up thinking of them as gentle giants because, their entire engagement with the animals and with caring for them just made them to be so civilized and so gentle. It's just a pleasure being with these people, it's just so different. But the fact is that they all joined the president's bodyguard because as far as they were concerned, they were joining the army, and the idea is not to be just ornaments of the president, look pretty, sitting on horses in some major event. So care is taken that they also train to do other things, like tent pegging and other competitions. A lot of them are good polo players. They get to go to Siachen for 3 to 6 months at a time. This is at the base camp in Siachen. I spent about 4 or 5 days there photographing them, because the training itself takes about 2 months because people have to acclimatize to be able to go and serve on the glacier. And I wanted to bring some of my studio portraiture into this book, because I'd been looking at the old paintings and the way they used to be portrayed earlier. So obviously I couldn't shoot this in a studio because there were horses involved. So there was this large courtyard which I dropped a canvas from the second floor of a building. And we used to start shooting at 10 o'clock at night because I wanted to use my flashlights. So you're shooting from 10 in the night till 2 in the morning over 4 or 5 days because you're photographing different uniforms in different situations. And I also photographed in the Ashok Hall, the entire regiment there. So you can imagine what it is like to light up a place like that and get this kind of a formal portrait. And this was the back cover. This is, I thought it was a nice way to say goodbye at the end of the book as you head out. Okay, this is a little bit of fun, which I do with my pictures. I hope some people are watching it on a laptop or on a larger screen, because on the phone, it's going to look silly. But I like shooting different pictures, which at times become series of projects or they become composites. And let me just show these. This actually is a commercial assignment. There's a hotel which is opening in Calcutta, and I was assigned, they wanted me to go and shoot the photographs of Calcutta. And I wanted to do it in a more, artistic way, let's say, and make my photograph look halfway between a painting and a photograph. So these are all actual buildings in Calcutta which I photographed. But I sat with Satpal, who does my retouching, and he's a master at that, and strip any blemishes of the pictures and the building so that they look like they were paintings virtually. So they're real photographs, but we worked on them. And so this is one large collage which has been put up in the hotel. Jyoti, I think this is the Holiday Inn which is opened last year in Calcutta. All right, this is actually a collage of about 40, 50 images which I shot with my iPhone. And as you know, there are these weekly hearts which happen in different places in the city. And what I did was I just went around photographing the products sold at each stall. So if you see, this actually is, small photographs. Some are fruits, some are, household objects, some are grain, some are cosmetics, and there's fabric, and then there's pottery. And this actually is now a large print, which is about 4 feet by 4 feet or something. And interestingly, it's, sells rather well as a print. And I was in London a few years ago, and I forget the name of that market. It's the flea market of London. And I saw this sign which says £5, and as people were walking past, I could see that they were like, all different kinds of people who came to that market. So I just used that £5 thing as an anchor, and I shot about 20, 25 such images of different people who were walking past. And then I put this together and patched it together as a kind of a composite portrait. I think it's called Camden Street. I think it's the Camden. Some of you might know about this. Camden Street Flea Market, I think it is. Yeah. And this is, I was in Mysore. My elder daughter Myra lives there. She's a yoga teacher. So I'd want to visit her. And I was sitting in this one, different ready place having dosas and all. And with my phone, I just shot these portraits of these people. And right there, I worked on them and I kind of made this composite. And I showed it to these people, I just love doing things like that. This is, we have the Aravali Biodiversity Park here in Gurgaon, and I go walking there every morning. When of course it's open, nowadays it's not. And this is through the winters when I just shoot everything I see. I'm a compulsive, obsessive photographer. And coming towards the end of my very long presentation, for me, photography is like a stream of consciousness too. I shoot all the time, like I said. And even nowadays, I do go out once in a while in the morning to do a short walk within 2 kilometers of my house. And Gurgaon is supposed to be the utopia, this millennial city, but is looking very dystopian nowadays. So these are some of the pictures. This was just the day after the lockdown was announced. And this seemed to me so emblematic of the construction workers who would suddenly be without a place to be in. Construction work has come to a halt. And is the virus scared or is the human scared? We will know as we go along. And this is huge construction happening next to the Ambience Island. DLF finally decided to build a mall there, but they had to stop. And it looks so dystopian. It's like it's sort of some kind of a horror film. And in these things, I don't mind. I love using different kind of filters and different effects on Snapseed and Instagram, and because I want the picture to look like the way I feel about what is in the photograph. So the wheels of society have come to a halt, and the vehicle has broken down. And I love still life, and this is not stilled life. Life has come to a standstill. And these are the way I find them on the road. It's just stuff, it's just that when you're involved with the world around you, you see all kinds of things. And even the street dogs are wondering where all the humans have gone. All right, the last thing, I've been going to Banaras for the last, this particular thing, the collection of photographs I'm going to show you. And my apologies for taking so long, but I am now at the end, and this is the last thing I want to show you. For me, Banaras is a place I've been going for the last 30 years, but since I went digital, which is about somewhere about 2004-05, right? But anyway, since 2006, I've been shooting on digital in Banaras. And the reason I see this even now as a project is that for me, Banaras is like a microcosm of India. Everything I love about my country is there. Everything I hate about the country is there. Everything which engages me about India is there. Everything which repels me about India is there. So it's been 14 years since I've been going there. It's 25 to 30 visits. It's more than 15,000 images. I was telling Summer, he was asking me, so when are you doing a book? I said, look, as far as I'm concerned, mera to kaam ho gaya. I've taken as much, value out of the entire thing as I wanted. And वो सोने पे सुहागा वाली बात है, अगर कल को किताब बन जाती है बढ़िया है, नहीं बनती तो तब भी ठीक है. So just to explain the title, Varanasi is called the eternal city. It's been there forever, which is why the word eternity. But I'm also interested in the everyday life of Varanasi. It's not just a pilgrimage center. It's not just this, holy Mecca for Hindus. It also has its own routine, and it's that what I look for. And even in the crowds and the melas and the festivals, I'm looking for that single person, the single person's communion with their faith and with their life. So let me just show you these few pictures now. That's my canvas, and I love this. I love these clouds. I love the color. But within this, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that serenity. I'm looking for that calm. I'm looking for that, one thing which really speaks to me. It could be a funny moment. It could be a touching moment. Something endearing. Like I said, I love people looking into my camera because I feel like I'm making that connect with them, even if it's just for that instant. This is, as you know, there's this corridor being made from the river to the Vishwanath Mandir. So I was there. I've got these two wonderful friends, Manish and Vinay, who take me around that city. They live in Banaras, the Banarsis. Most wonderful, warm people you can ever meet. So they always take me to places which, one would normally not go to. वो दो मेरे और बांसुरी वाले वो भी हैं. हाँ. बड़ी लंबी लिस्ट है. All right, to end, sorry, just so that there's a little snapshot of what my life is till the lockdown. So in the last month before the lockdown, there are these three things which I was working on, and I thought I'd just share a few pictures. So this is in a way also kind of shows the kind of thing which I do simultaneously, which is what I love about my life and my work. So I was shooting portraits of the deans of the Pearl Academy of Design for the admissions campaign, which unfortunately might be stalled right now. So I shot these formal portraits in their studio in Narayana, Rajouri Garden, I think that's where they are, yeah. And I'm working on a project on Qawwalis with Manjuri Chaturvedi, who's, as you know, is a Sufi Kathak dancer, and she does a seminar on Qawwalis every year. I've done one project with her 4 years ago, and now Mustafa Qureshi, Lina Kejriwal, and I are working on Qawwali for her. And the exhibition was actually supposed to start on the 10th of April at the IIC, but it's now going to be in November. So I was in Ajmer during the Urs in the first week of March. So within the mosque, you're not allowed to take your cameras. I've only shot with my phone, actually. Some of these pictures, and this is with my phone. So is this. And I had photographed the interiors of Adil's house, which I'd showed a few pictures earlier to you. So this is what I was doing in the month of Feb and early March before the lockdown happened. Shukriya. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you for listening to this long journey. And that's it for me.
Thank you, sir. It was such a wonderful presentation. I think we wish that it can just go on and on. And
So फिर तो करण जोहर वाली फिल्म बन जाती है अपनी साइड में घंटे वाली.
आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
आपकी आवाज आ रही है? आ रही है.
Yeah. So if you can stop sharing the screen, then we can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm supposed to get out of this.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So it was such a wonderful presentation, and I think you kept on saying that you want to share more, and sorry for this, but there are people who are saying that wish we could. It just can go on and on because you don't want festivals to end, right? This was almost like a festival where you are celebrating life. Everything is so colorful. Everything is the tapestry is so beautiful, and you don't want it to end because who wants celebrations to end? And photography is like what you showed is something which is which just Maushmi just pointed out in YouTube, said that it is really heavy duty and it is so diverse and rich portfolio. And I think that is I would agree with you. I just noted down few takeaways for me. There was a lot of takeaways, but I think that is there for everybody who's watching this kind of a session. Is that first you said that you wanted to use photography as a means of expression, and that really shows in your the entire set of images and portfolios that you shared with us. And then your second was that making connection with people is probably the best thing you can do while shooting. And I think this is where most of us lose out because instead of we try and misunderstand the meaning of candid and really start trying to steal and trying to hide behind the camera and trying to hide behind that pillar, and we fail to make a connect. And then you said was shoot the picture that touches your heart, and I think that sums it up. There are a lot of things.
That is Raghuji's words, which I've stolen. It's something which touched my heart when he said that. But
yeah. So it's amazing. Before we come to, there are some interesting questions by participants also that I'm sure panelists must also be able to ask you the questions. There's one particular question that comes to my mind is that, and I wanted to ask you before we move on to the panelists, that your body of work is marked by the richness of expression that we see. It is it shows in each and every image that you shared with us, whether it was street, whether it was portraits or studio or your commercial work. And it's like a festival of colors and expression, and it's quite uniformly spread across various genres that you shoot. How do you define your kind of work that you do? If you have to sum it up, bring everything together and in one sentence or in a couple of sentences.
I think the simplest way to say it would be that I'm a photographer of life. I love life. I love what life. I love the stage which life is built for us, theater which we get to see, which we are fortunate enough to be part of, both as participants and both as audience. कभी आप audience में हैं, कभी आप stage पे हैं. I love observing life, and I observe myself observing life, which is something which you learn along the way, because that's the way which I find that I get to be more sensitive to things, to people, to situations. It's that's for me, that's been my learning. My reward more than the learning is that life going on. You can sit on the side and become an uninvolved person, or you can say, listen, I'm going to walk along, I'm going to be part of this, I want to be here, I want to see what's happening, I want to be a participant. I'm a participative photographer.
That's a wonderful way to answer. I think it's one of the best answers that one could give. And thank you, sir, for this. And anyone from panelists would want to ask any question?
Yes, I have one.
Sorry. Yeah. Go on, Hari.
Yeah. Who wants to come?
Okay, I have a question, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I audible? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Jyoti, I can hear you.
Dinesh, that was really, really very inspiring. I've seen most of this work on a presentation today on Zoom, and but I can still watch it once again. I mean, everything, and the images that you show and your narration that goes with each and every frame, it's really very inspiring, and it keeps your attention continuously on. I had one question. That's how do you approach a new client for assignments? I mean, I have two questions, both interrelated. How do you approach a new client for assignments, and how do you maintain the relationship with a client for whom you've already worked?
How do I approach new clients? Fortunately, I guess, because like I said, I started in advertising, so that is something which kind of flowed into my early years of photography. Then, there are relationships which you create, which happen circumstantially, but more importantly, the relationships that you maintain. Relationships in the professional world are as fragile or as strong as personal relationships are. You have to understand, or this is my way of thinking, that I will give as much value to my relationship on a one-to-one human basis with the client rather than thinking. And this is something which I would like to tell or speak to, younger photographers. There's a sense of antagonism which seems to come in. People think कि मैं artist और ये पैसे वाला. No, the point I was making earlier is please understand that if someone is coming to you because of your skill and your talent, yes, they believe in you. So one, respect them for that. Don't be arrogant about that. More importantly, at least as far as commercial work is concerned, and that's, I think, the kind of question you're asking, and that's not only for advertising, that can be for editorial and that can be for even galleries, is that you have to understand that where your involvement with the photograph ends is where the client's involvement with the photograph starts. Whether they're selling it as a gallerist, whether they're going to be using it with a magazine for a story, or whether it's going to be a restaurant which is going to use a food picture to sell their menu. For them, the value starts then. You have to understand that, and if you can respect that, and if you can feel, the responsibility of creating that picture, One, your sense of self-esteem would go up. Two, you will understand that your relationship with this person is more human. It's more reciprocal. It is not antagonistic. You are part of the same flow. So that's the way I hope I have maintained my relationships. And I think it probably is true because I have had clients who have had for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, so they go back as far as that. About new clients, fortunately for me, earlier work has led to more work, or in the case of advertising, for instance, people are fairly mobile. An art director you worked with an agency A goes to agency B, calls you there too. And people who you didn't work with over there come to know of you, and they, so it's just like a cascading effect, which has happened to me over the years. But the most important ambassador for you for getting new work is your work. No one can speak more eloquently about your work than your work does. So one, respect your work. Two, do it well. Three, make sure you present it in a form, whether it's on social media, whether it's in a portfolio, whether it's the way it's used in magazines or advertising, that it's used in a way that it is dignified.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You had another question, Jayati? You want to ask now?
I can. I mean,
Yeah, please.
do you think for a formal course in photography is important, and self-taught photographers are losing out because they don't have a formal, degree in photography?
See, a degree in photography never got anyone a job as much as a degree in economics does not get you a job in World Bank. Okay, so that is something let's be very clear about. Why do we go and get into the education of any field? I mean, forget about photography here for a moment. I'm talking about whether you want to be an engineer, or you want to be a doctor, or whether you want to be a photographer, or whether you want to be an architect. There are two reasons. One, you go into a place which will share with you the repository of knowledge and wisdom, hopefully, of all that has been collected about that particular genre or that field over the years, whether it's in the form of books or in the form of workshops, definitely in the form of people who are going to deliver it to you, which are the teachers, right? Very important part, which you might not be able to get on your own. Though today, ostensibly, everything is available on YouTube and on the internet, etc. But there's another value when it's taught to you by a good teacher as opposed to self-learning. There's nothing wrong with self-learning, which also happens. I'm a self-learned photographer. Summers is not. He's also done a course. I don't know about Jassi, but the value of going for a photography education, to my mind, is this. And very importantly, in that 1 year or that 6 months or that 1 weekend or that 2 years, when you're doing an educational, thing about photography, you are with a group of people who are there with the same passion, right?
Yeah.
You're there with a group of
Yeah.
peers, whether they might be different ages or whatever it is, but their passion for photography has got them together. That sharing
Yeah.
and that learning from each other, to my mind, is extremely valuable. And that is something which otherwise photography, as we always say, particularly is a very lonely kind of a profession or a very lonely kind of a genre. Largely you're on your own, but if you start off, or even along the way, once in a while, go off, do a workshop, become a part of, doing some kind of a course somewhere or the other. In a way, it rejuvenates you. And these are the two things which rejuvenate you. One, a good teacher who delivers that message to you in a good, creative way. Two, the synergy you feel with people who are in the same environment, who are there for the same passion.
Okay, yeah.
Anyone else? Anybody else? Shriyan, yeah.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dinesh ji. It was a wonderful experience listening to you.
Thank you.
My question is about street photography, because I'm practicing this this genre for some years now. You've been shooting for many years, been into more of a traditional form of art. how do you see this evolving in this genre? Like a lot of experiments are being happening right in street photography. Things have really changed from the traditional methods which is being practiced before. How do you see it now, and what is your views on the current method of experimentation in this art?
I won't answer that directly because I don't think I have much of an opinion about what is happening in terms of evolution, except what I would like to say is that evolution in any art form is a must. Change is a must. Whether you're talking about painting, or whether you're talking about singing, or whether you're talking about dance, uh, it moves forward because people make it move forward. And moving forward normally also implies destroying, recreating, or just creating fresh, right? So there's no reason why photography or any genre of photography should not also be, have this applied to that. So that's one as far as any art form is concerned in terms of its evolution. In particular, to do with photography, there's another very interesting thing. Unlike most art forms, photography is very technology led. If you see from the time it was invented, like for instance, a lot of art forms are not invented, they were part of the human expression, whether it is to paint, whether it's to sing, whether it's to talk, you know. Photography is an invented art. It was invented 150, 200 years ago. And photography has changed as technology changed it. Photography to start with, it was 5 ISO kind of film, and there wasn't even film, there were glass plates. You had large, cameras which you could not even hold, so they had to be carried by people and, taken to the field. To a point when then came the 4x5, then came the 120, then came the 35, then came the mobile. And at each technological change has changed the way people related to and use photography, both for information and as expression. All right. So people, for instance, say, so do you think the mobile phone is destroying photography? No. Photography remains. What is photography? Photography is an image. How it's recorded is actually not the point. But in the case of photography, because the ease with which you can practice photography changes with the kind of camera you are able to use, or the kind of films or the sensors which are available to you, it will evolve. So why should street photography not evolve and not change? Of course it should. But just to give you another analogy, let's take music, for instance. By new genres or new styles of music, does classical music have to die? Therefore,
Thank you. I got it.
Any questions, Srijan?
Yeah, I just had, no question, just an observation. Dinesh's work I've been watching for a very long time. And a lot of this work I've seen, a number of times. But, my biggest takeaway, especially for young photographers, is that, you can get yourself into this box of, I want to do this, I love this, I figured it out, and I'm going to stick to it. So whatever it is, commercial, interior, street photography, whatever. But I think what I find in Dinesh's work is that, you enjoy the process of photography, the process of connecting with people, whatever that is, commercial, non-commercial, personal, magazine, editorial, whatever it is. And, I think that's a really, truly what picture making is all about. It's the experience, because you just want to, as a human being, you want to experience so many things. So as a photographer, you want to experience so many things. So it's not just limited to that, in my profession, I figured this out, so let me stick to this. And I think that just comes across anything, right from, I wish I could have seen your pictures of what you did when you were in Tamil Nadu for that month, when you actually started, or when you, you borrowed your dad's camera, sold, FM2 or whatever it was. I wonder what those pictures were like. But I think, that whole passion, or, I don't want to create all these wordings around it, but I think, that deeper connect is such that whether you're shooting Kahani Kursi ki, or whether you're shooting, interior in Sri Lanka, a hotel or whatever. And that's so brilliant, because I think, we kind of forget in this race of, getting clients, how to make a great portfolio and how you need to be famous and money and drama and all that stuff. We unfortunately lose, and we become so mechanical that the whole idea of creativity was not really about that. So I just thought, Dinesh,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's a wonderful observation, sir. Hari Menon, sir.
Yes, sir. I like to know more about. He worked on many books, and I've seen wonderful books from his side. So I want to know more about how he worked on a specific book and a specific theme. From where to start?
As I explained, for me, Bazaar and Living Faith didn't start as book projects. They started with my engagement with wanting to, travel, learn about India. Like when I quit advertising in the 80s, end of the 80s and early 90s, when I became a commercial photographer, I was very, conscious of the fact that I was one of those Delhi, Bombay dudes, who have this small little clique which you work with and live with. And we think that we are the guys who run this country, or we are this country. We are as real as anyone else is, like the farmer I shoot in Madhya Pradesh, or, or the person who's selling chola bhatura on the street of Lucknow. But I was very acutely aware of the fact that there were these other Indias which I didn't know enough about, and I wanted to go and explore those. So that's how the entire process started. It wasn't that I was going out to do a book on Bazaar or to do a book on Living Faith. So it was the entire exploration of both India and its people and its life, and photography for me. I was learning photography really at that time, in the 90s. So that's how those two books were born. But if you look at A President's Bodyguard, now that happened much later in my life, much later in my career, and is commissioned. So where everything was arranged, everything required rules and regulations, everything required permissions, So it was a totally different exercise. So from the beginning, I knew I was doing a book. There were writers, there was research. There's this Ashwini, who was a PhD, who was helping this entire thing, and she had her own ideas. So I was part of a team which is working on that book. So that's a different experience altogether. But I did bring to that my entire curiosity about how things are. I know that for a fact that things which I was photographing in the barracks, the life about these soldiers, or the fact that I wanted to go to Siachen, or how they train and groom the horses, wasn't expected. They were probably happy with doing the pomp and pageantry, and that would have been it. But the humanization of the entire thing came from the fact that I'm a certain kind of photographer. So what happens is that you bring to a particular project, whatever it might be, what is required and what is told to you in a brief, and you need to bring to it what you are as a human being and as a photographer. And hopefully the amalgam is what makes it richer and more creative.
Thank you. And I got most common question: what you see as the future of travel photography? As you are a travel photographer and you are into street photography also. So looking at the current scenario.
If you're asking me what is the future of travel photography commercially, is that what you're asking me? I have no answer to that, because
both ways.
But I would be concerned about how much travel is going to be possible and what cost would be.
Yeah, being an experienced travel photographer, what do you feel? Even I want to ask Samak Jodha also.
I'm dreading the next few months or the next couple of years, because I would think that for a while things are going to be very different. Logistically, financially, medically, there would be this entire problem, or problems which one would have to encounter in terms of being able to travel, being able to go to new places, people being, okay about a stranger being in the midst. But I don't want to say too much about that and sound like someone who's, getting scared or passing on scared. Because I don't know, you don't know, no one knows, what the next few months and the next couple of years are going to unfold like. We are entering a phase which you really can't take from patterns in the past, because what we're encountering presently is something which we as a generation have never encountered, because people who, for instance, lived through the Spanish flu aren't alive anymore, and this society and this our present world has not encountered this before. So it will be a brand new thing, not just for travel photography, but for life itself. Let's see how we do it.
Great answer, sir. There is one question from participant on YouTube, and I'll also have a similar extension to that. It is that I personally think that it's by Lavjeet Singh. I personally think that street photography teaches you so many things that you can apply on other streams as well. The main question is how to stand apart and how to create a story.
Okay, to answer that, at heart, at practice, and in my mind, I'm a street photographer. Because that's been my learning place, that's been my engagement place, that's been my passion today until I can carry a camera and move around. The one thing which people ask, so how are you handling the lockdown, how are you feeling and all that. I'm used to being at home. I spend a lot of time at home because normally either I'm at home or I'm traveling. Whether it's I'm traveling because I want to go to a certain place to shoot for myself, or my assignments normally are the kind which take me out of. So the only thing which has changed for me in the last 6-8 weeks is the fact that I'm not traveling at all. And that's what I'm dreading, that how will I start traveling again? How will I get back into the streets? How will I get back into the places which I love? The hearts and the gullies and the melas. So that's one part of it. The other is that how do you stand apart? I mean, just follow your heart, shoot pictures which you are true to. At the same time, look at other people's work, watch what's happening. Are there trends? How are people expressing themselves? You will be influenced. You might at times be copying, but eventually when you're taking that picture, you might have seen all the works of all the masters in the world, seen all their books, been to all their websites. But when you're in the street with your camera and life is in front of you, you still shoot it the way you see it. And so do that as the best as you can. Like I said, might sound corny. If the picture or the situation speaks to you, you'll get a great picture because you're speaking back to it. Get the communication right. If you've communicated with the situation in front of you, that communication will pass on to anyone who's going to look at your picture, and that's how it will stand apart.
Perfect answer, sir. There's another question from him only, Lavjeet Singh. Now, I think that is the question that probably crops up in every beginner photographer's mind, is that the time you started was very early and not too much of competition that point of time. I don't know how far it is true, but that's his question. So right now, every lane has a photographer. How to set us apart in this modern world and still do not get demotivated?
Okay, there might not have been a lot of photographers when I started out or when Summer started out, but just remember one thing, that we had enormous competition in the medium itself. All right. Today, you have the advantage of being able to buy a camera, switch it on, and you actually don't need to even learn about the physics of light or the the chemistry of film. And you can just go out and start taking pictures, and you can actually take pictures which are true to yourself in the way you see the world, all right, without really worrying about it. So this entire myth of it was easier earlier is bullshit. Okay, there was a different set of challenges there. There's a different set of challenges today. Whether it was then or whether it's today, what you need to do is to understand how do you engage with what you want to photograph. I'm putting a full step in between each of those words so that I can emphasize on it and you can understand what I'm saying. If you follow your heart, if you follow your way of looking at things and use photography as your means for expressing, you will be unique because you are unique, period. Then leave it for the world to say कि मेरे को आपका काम पसंद है, इसके लिए मैं पैसे देना चाहता हूँ, इसके लिए आपको मैं अवार्ड देना चाहता हूँ. उसके पीछे आप भागेंगे तो भाई तो फिर वहीं रह जाओगे. अगर आप पहले यही नहीं एंगेज कर सकते कि आप क्या चाहते हो, आप क्या कर रहे हो, आप किसके बारे में बोलना चाहते हो, तो don't blame the universe for it. I'm sorry. It is, and this is something I'm going to say which sounds rude, but I've been saying it recently over the last couple of years. Buying a camera does not make you a photographer, it makes you a camera owner. You have to have the sense and the wisdom to say, I want to be a photographer. Don't say from the beginning that I am a photographer. All right. The analogy I'll give you is that if you get into medical school, you don't say, I'm a doctor. You say, I want to be a doctor. You spend 5 years learning it, all right? Then you do maybe your specialization and you spend another 2 years or whatever. And then someone tells you that now you're a doctor. Wait for someone to tell you that now you're a photographer, and that will come when people like your work, respect your work, and respect you as a creator of that work. Owning a camera and saying, oh, and 50,000 others own a camera, then worry about the herd and be part of the herd. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Dinesh, I just want to add something here. What you said very rightly. See, also, I mean, the time when, let's say 20, 30 years back, when one started the career, let's say 30 odd years back, the pie was very small that time,
Yeah.
You had precisely, one agency which probably had 4 photo assignment probably in a week at the most. So the pie was small, and we obviously had other issues, as you said, the camera issues and the gear you couldn't, and the clients at that time were nothing. We are shooting for companies like Modi Olivetti, the companies which have probably disappeared or whatever it is now. Those are the kind of clients. Today, there's such a huge consumerism has come in that the possibilities are massive, much, much more. And it goes back to what you said, that, how innovative you are and, what your observation is, the possibilities are a lot more then. Because, yeah, if you're just going to get caught up in your little web about that, I'm wonderful, that's not going to serve it. I have a camera, that's not going to serve it. But if you have the ability to see differently, the avenues today are so many, many more. And I think that's a very positive thing,
Yeah, thank you so much for this valuable input. I think that probably would answer many of my future questions also, that what is the advice that you would want to give to newbies, but I think you've already
But if I may
answered that.
if I may add one little point to that,
Right.
Yeah.
starting out, and now, especially in today's world, and I'm talking about the kind of world we are in today, all right, and what it's going to be like in the next few months, in the next couple of years. If you have any other skill which is revenue generating skill, all right, it would be worthwhile to make sure that you stick with that and don't put all the pressure on photography to make a living for you. So that
Right.
is not going to be easy in the coming few months or in the coming couple of years. It's a fact, and the fact has to do with the state of the economy in the larger sense. Especially we're looking at commercial stroke editorial photography. All of that is in peril at the moment. All of it will be reinvented. All of it has to be reconstructed, right? So if you, for instance, have an accountancy, background, or if you, are an engineer who wants to be this, or someone who's working in the IT field and wants to become a photographer, don't give up on photography. Make sure you stay with it, but don't put pressure on photography to make a living for you, because then you'll be disappointed and there'll be a double damage. One, you might not be able to make a good enough living. Two, you'll get pissed off with photography and you'll leave it. And who'll be the loser? You'll be the loser.
Right, sir, right. I think one last, I think, very important question, and then we wind up. That's been going on in my mind for quite a long time now. You are the one who have shot in the film era. You have, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, sir.
It seems to be. Yeah. So, and digital era, you have also been shooting. So one of the biggest, I think, what can I say? Something which has actually hit something very hard is the print media, in terms of getting your images printed or getting a coffee table book printed. How do you see this surviving, or do you still see books getting printed, or they will transition more into the ebook scenario? What is your take on that? What is your opinion on that?
Okay, my take, and I would also want to hear Samar's. I think it would be important to get 2 points of view here. Maybe it's similar, but if I may go first.
Yeah.
Print medium was important as long as the only way you could interact with photography or the photograph you shot was you had to make a print to see it, right? Because film insisted that if you were shooting color negative or black and white, you were seeing the film and the image in reverse on a small little piece of celluloid, right? And for you to be able to experience the actual image which is shot, you had to make a print. All right. In my case, because I was shooting transparency, okay, so you saw the true colors in the true image, but it was still that one little small, 35 mm TP. So that is how the culmination of film photography happened. It was film, camera, processing, print, because that's how you engage with the image. Today with digital, the huge change is the fact that you have a camera and you have a sensor and you have the screen. Now, whether it's on the back of your camera, or whether it's on the laptop, or whether it's your large desktop or whatever it is, your engagement with the photograph has become a screen medium, right? So in that kind of situation, will the engagement with paper print still carry on? Could well become, if not already archaic, will become archaic. It's like saying, in the someone gave me this very interesting, another photographer told me this, that in 1901, if you saw, there was a photograph from New York, Times Square, which is full of horses and buggies and stuff like that. And the same area was shot in 1914 or 15, and there was one horse, and there were cars, and all the buggies had disappeared. So you could be lamenting in that time, that era was so wonderful when we could, ride on horses, and the buggies used to be so pretty and so lovely. हो गया भाई, चला गया. तो अब ये क्वेश्चन जरूर है, ये ट्रांजिशन जो है किताब का, बल्कि मेरे को, I really realized the difference in the, like I was saying when I was telling you about the story with Penguin and me, for me it was this huge validation that a publishing house is saying, we will publish your book, because it meant they had to like my work, because they were going to risk their money, okay, and the name by putting that book out there, all right? Today, about 10 years ago, there was this young photographer who had come to show me his work, and he'd been doing a lot of wedding work, but he wanted to be a documentary photographer, etc. And so baaton mein ho raha tha ki he said, oh sir, I've seen your books, so how many have you done? I've seen Bazaar and Living Path. I said, well, I've done these, and I think by that time I had also done Resident Bodyguard. Just very proudly I said, no, I've done 3 books and I'm working on a 4th one, which is The Life of Rashtrapati Bhavan. He said, अच्छा sir, but मैंने तो 6-7 किताबें कर ली हैं. I said, अच्छा, अरे वाह. So नहीं सर, हर शादी के लिए नहीं, पर कई शादियां होती हैं जब लोगों के पास बजट होता है तो वो कहते हैं किताब बना दो. So that's the day when I realized ki boss, that thing which I had in my mind, that your validation as a photographer and your work, if someone is saying I'll publish your book, is gone. But now what has happened is that there's this self-published stream, which I will leave to Samar to talk about more, which you can say, is between vanity and value. Like with anything, it covers the spectrum, which is governed by the value of the concept and the delivery of the work. Some cases, a lot of cases, is pure vanity. कि मेरी किताब बन रही है, मैं self-publish कर रहा हूँ. In some cases, it is value because the work is really damn good. Samar?
Yeah, I think Dinesh, you kind of answered everything. But going back to your observation, that film world and digital world, what you were talking about. I think one very critical thing, which unfortunately even I suffer because I do so much work digitally today, and in fact a lot on my phone. I think the biggest thing which really lacks is that the engagement with your subject, because of this digital device, it almost ends up as a carpet bombing syndrome, because okay, yaar, 40 frame खींचूंगा इसमें से, I'll go back to the studio and I'll pull out that one, because partly we lived in socialism, so wo film was so expensive to begin with, and then you if you shot, you spend the whole weekend going on your own personal thing, pictorial photography, landscape, whatever, 2 frame खींच के लेके आ गए, it's like yaar aaj shayad ek photo ban gayi hai meri. What I'm saying is that that entire mystery of photography was, it was, I mean, I sound very old fashioned, but it was just so beautiful that, you were really pausing, thinking, engaging, and then hitting that button, which, kind of has gone away. It's gone away in my own life too. I mean, I shoot so much more now because it's digital, and not that, I mean, a lot of my clients can very easily afford even if it's shot on film. But I think that's a very big shift. And then going to your point on publishing, I think that is a very valid point. Today, the whole idea of, when you, I mean, I remember I don't know, 15, 18 years back when I was, I think, at one of these stores at Harrods or something. And, you know, I saw your book there. And, you know, I was looking at it and I was just thinking that, you know, this is publishing. Now, of course, the economics have changed. You know, the whole mechanism have changed. The consuming habits have changed of how books are today seen. Books shops are shutting down. Coffee table books don't really make much sense for so many people unless you have something, as you said, which may have a larger value either for a client or a collector or buyer or whatever it is. And, you know, you end up with, because, you know, I also started at a level where, oh, nobody's going to remember my advertising work, so I must do a book, you know, because that is what's going to be like my whatever legacy, whatever you're going to name it as. And what happens is you go shoot, you print, you know, do whether self-publishing, publisher, whatever it is. End of the day, you know, you end up with as a spine, you know, basically there is nothing else. How many copies are you going to print? Publisher will print maybe 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, maybe one or two more editions if it is a good product. But then what happens is that it just ends up in a bookshelf, or it just gets basically dubbed under the next one and the next one, you know, as the books come and keep sitting on it, you know, it's gone there. So it's probably, as you very rightly said, that at one level it is also a vanity issue, you know, where you see that, okay, you know, I'm in print, you know, I own something which is like a book form for me now. But you know, and then I think also I must point this out, especially for, you know, other students out here, is Dinesh's thing on Banaras. You know, he's been at it for last 20 years, you know, since 2004 or whenever. It's been going on for a very long time. And I've asked you this so many times. I mean, we haven't even had a slideshow, forget about an exhibition or a book or whatever it is. But see, the biggest learning or biggest takeaway is that, you know, a photographer like Dinesh and so many other people, they haven't gone with this thing in their mind, कि यार मैं जाके 2 winters and 2 monsoons and I'll have a book on this place. Because what you're doing is you're putting your exhibition, your destination, your book in the front, and you're missing the entire point, you know. Your process of going and hanging out with that chai wala for last 15 years, you know, it's like it's the most precious thing, you know, to take away, I think. And, you know, that is where your ability to communicate, to listen to people, and then you apply that not just in Banaras, you apply that when you're working with your client in Sri Lanka, you know, that they keep calling you back because they see the engagement is very different. I think that's really important for young photographers to connect, that, you know, it's just not about, you know, what is going to be the end product, you know, what your whole journey, how do you express that, how do you connect it at each step, you know, in different scenario. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but that's what I thought.
Thank you, sir. I think it's been a phenomenal session. We are now inching towards almost 3-hour mark.
Excellent.
Sorry about that, yeah.
No, it's great. I'm so glad.
That's actually phenomenal. And I think we will have to wind up now. Hari, can you switch on your camera?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Sriranj, you're there? Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you, guys. It's been really wonderful. Thank you, Dinesh sir. Thank you, Sama sir, for actually sparing your time. Thank you, Sriranj, Hari, yourself, Jayati, for agreeing to be a part of the panel as well. And we wanted to ensure that this session becomes one of the best sessions that we are doing. And I think in terms of content, it certainly has become. And the way we are seeing that people are still sticking onto the YouTube and asking questions is really amazing. And just 2 things that one, Anu says that you must compliment him from my side with a new name, that he's a life photographer. So compliments to you from Anu sir. And then Moshmi says that as Hari has already mentioned about books, let me take the opportunity to ask you, let's finish our Delhi 6-2. A bold request, very close to my heart. So
That's another one of our forever projects.
Yeah. So I think with this we'd like to bid goodbye and thank you everyone again, and hope to reconnect on some other session. And yeah, one thing is there that on 5th we are doing one session with Deepti Asthana, which is being moderated by Dinesh sir. So he's agreed to moderate.
Oh yeah, that's on Tuesday morning, right?
Not forget to log in on 5th at 2 p.m. So anybody wants to be on the panel can please, yeah. So just let me know. We'll add. So thank you again and bye everyone.
Thank you for
Alright.
the opportunity, Jassi. Thank you. And
Thanks,
thank you,
everyone.
Kamal,
Thanks,
Jyoti,
Dinesh.
and
See
Hari.
you guys.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Shukriya.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you guys. Thank you.
Oh.